Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Inspired by Mystery podcast. I am your host, Sammy Soros, and today I have a very special guest. This is Dr. Keren Prize Bolter, my friend for almost 30 years at this point. We have known each other for so long, so I am so happy to have you here on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here too. Hey, Sammy. Thanks for having me.
Hi.
You can hear me?
Absolutely. I can hear you great. Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, it is it's so cool to see your face after all of this time. Because I feel like we've been Facebook friends for so long, but I haven't seen you in person in the flesh since I don't know, 97 or something like that. It's been a long time. It's
Yeah, you look
awesome.
beautiful.
Thank you. You're so sweet. I think we look pretty good for our age, I have to say. I
Yes.
think we're nailing it. But yeah, it's really fantastic to see somebody who's done so much since I've seen you last. It's really cool, like following everybody on Facebook and getting to see the paths that everybody's lives have taken. And some people are pretty much exactly like they were in high school. Some people totally shifted gears and got these careers we never would have imagined them doing. But I feel like you have such an important career, and I'm so happy and proud of you for doing something so important for the world. So this
Thank
is
you.
it's
Yeah,
important.
it's such a gift. I'm grateful every day that I can do what I love and that it's so interesting. And I loved this even back in high school. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I was like climate change girl back then. I was on the Envirothon team.
That's awesome. No, I honestly did not remember that. And that was before everything became so dire of a situation. We all were like, save the whales. And, it was definitely a big thing back in the 90s was taking care of the environment. Little did we know how quickly that things would expedite and the situation that we're in right now. So this is just something that you've always been interested in, just environmental sciences since you've been a kid, huh?
Yeah, yeah, and it's definitely for my parents and how every summer we had a huge RV and we would go on these long camping trips for the whole summer. We go to the Rocky Mountains or the Smoky Mountains and all the hiking and my mom always loved the ocean, so I'm sure that has something to do with it. And then, I was always into environmental stuff, but for me, it was like a no-brainer with climate change. Like, this is the big one. Like, yeah, so I mean, extinction, habitat loss, like all those other things, like the sea turtles. I mean, they're all like terrible, terrible things. But like basically the circulation of our atmosphere and our ocean and like the equilibrium that we have on this planet just being knocked off. That's it's like it doesn't compare, right? Like
You're absolutely
recyclables,
right.
plastic straws, like or not using plastic straws, like it's a whole nother realm of insanity, like threat.
So, when you initially decided to go and get your doctorate in this, was it just kind of a no brainer that this is what you knew your life's purpose was to focus on trying to educate people on it?
Yeah, definitely. I always knew whatever I did, I just wanted climate change to be at the middle. And then now sea level rise is like even more of a focus for me.
And growing up in South Florida, for those of you that don't know, I grew up in Coral Springs in South Florida, which is where I went to school with Karen. So, South Florida, of all places, I feel like is the most vulnerable. And we, even as younger people, like we saw the effects of this. Like basically where we lived in Coral Springs used to be part of the Everglades until the 60s. They just sucked the Everglades out and put some dirt down and planted some palm trees. And that's where we grew up. There was no history, like it was just pretty much like swamp land. So we just
Yeah.
kind of sucked it out and just kind of made a place to live. So it shows that, we're manipulating things the best that we can. But when it comes down to it, the earth will still choose what it is that we get. eventually. And Florida being so low, I mean, it's like I remember I was at 1 foot above sea level was my house in Coconut Creek that I lived in. A foot above. Like that's nothing. There's not a lot of room for error with this right now. So you staying in Florida, I can imagine you've seen so many changes just in your short lifetime, and then you doing all the science and the calculations of where things are going at this point is probably terrifying because it's your home. I mean, it was my home when I was younger, but it's currently your home right now. That's where your children live. It's probably
Yeah.
really extra scary for you seeing these effects on a regular.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I don't like shudder in fear. I definitely am concerned, but not to the point where I'm moving. I mean, I own my house. My family business is property management, and actually, I don't want to tell you you're wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's nowhere in Coconut Creek that's a foot above sea level. No offense. Like,
Really? Yeah, I remember my parents told me
yeah,
that that's where we're at, but
yeah, so they
who
were
knows? I was
wrong
a kid.
too. Because
Okay, that's
like
possible.
so something I do want to show later on, I'll share my screen, is like there's amazing tools out there where you can go anywhere in the world really and see, like, there's like a slider bar and you can raise the sea level and see where, how vulnerable different areas are. So that's why I think like knowing your risk is super important. And so people think that, like, a lot of people think that we're below, there's areas below sea level, like in New Orleans, you can't be, or in the Netherlands, like it, we actually have the water table is higher than sea level, right? Like our drinking water. So it's because it's it's very shallow, and most of the elevation, like for example, if you look, I'll show some elevation maps, but basically like where we grew up is some of the highest elevations in Broward County. So like,
Really?
yeah, Coral Springs, Coconut Creek, it's like 12 to 15 feet. And then you go further
Interesting.
south
Okay.
and it gets way lower. So like, yeah, there's parts of Miami Beach or like around Fort Lauderdale, Las Olas Isles, like there's older houses definitely that could be like 2, 3, or 4 feet, and definitely the roads. I mean, there's this road in Fort Lauderdale that used to be a canal and it's underwater like every day at high tide in the fall. It's really crazy. Yeah.
Really?
So I can show you that on the maps too. But I mean, that's, so it's knowing where you are and what the risk is. I mean, just because, we're going to be on Coral Springs Island, like that's not really, it's obviously not just parcel level, like where, or your city. It's ever, there's ripple effects and water doesn't care about the borders. But I think, like in terms of the fear, like one of my TED Talks is about um, how to just be with this existential threat, and how to do something with it that's not, like it was how to kind of deal. People, I found that when I talk to them about sea level rise and climate change, they either kind of they don't care or they get upset, like they feel resigned, or, and just how to be more. I think that what's missing, like where my mission is how to communicate in a way that people are inspired and want to help and want to do something and come together. Like this is not something that, you can keep throwing science at and facts and data, because that's not working, right? It's politicized to where people still think that maybe it's not happening. We had a president making fun of it, and like, so
I know.
it's about, I think that's what's missing is the communication, and communicating in like a scary way, it doesn't help anywhere. Like people just get paralyzed in the fear, and it's so overwhelming. It's like, what do I even do? So I think that these, like, understanding, okay, these are the risks. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what we could be doing about it. It's just really positive, and it's generative language rather than, oh no, I'm going to be underwater. And in reality, I mean, the good thing is it does happen incrementally. It's not like this, massive 10-foot storm surge. It's happening,
Sure.
like, if I can show you some projections, but basically, like, the sea level rise rate in South Florida matches the global rate. Some areas, like in around you, it's like there's things, glacial rebound and all these like geologic processes that kind of are locally change the sea level rise rate, but basically, the way that it's rising right now, and it's going to kind of accelerate like this, like curve. They usually go out to 2100. So, 2060, 2 feet of sea level rise. And then we could have 3 feet, a decade or two after. And they're saying that by 2100, yeah, it could be, you know, 6, 7, 8 feet plus. Some of the high extremes are like at 10 feet. So, yeah, but we're not going to be here. The kids will be here, right? I mean, it's hard to even
I know.
imagine. Like, at what point can I say I told you so?
I know.
But
I mean, in a way, it's a good thing that we're halfway through our lives, so we personally won't most likely see the worst effects of this, but it's your children and your grandchildren and your great grandchildren that are going to really see the effects that this has. And just the change in climate in general, it's getting so hot. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about all the heat waves that we've been
yeah,
having that was smashing records. I mean, it reached 108 degrees in Seattle in June. That is insane. Portland reached 114, I believe. 114 in Portland. That is crazy. Nothing like that has ever happened before. So we're starting to see so many changes, and people are going to be shifting and moving out of these areas that are just getting uninhabitable. The water tables are falling in so many of the reservoirs through the West,
yeah.
too. So the power is being cut because of the, hydroelectric power. Like things are shifting so fast. So I feel like there's going to be movement over time of people leaving regions that are just uninhabitable. And that not only goes for the heat, changes that we're having, but also once, certain coastal areas are not inhabitable anymore, people are just going to have to move. And it's so sad because these are people's homes, especially in the Middle East. Some of these places in the Middle East, these people live in villages, where their families have lived in Saudi Arabia or whatever. And it's just getting to the point where it's 128 degrees, like who can
Yeah.
live through that? So there is such vast changes that are affecting so many people that people are going to end up having to pick up and move their families. And not everybody has the money to be able to do that, which makes it really hard and sad,
That's such a good point. Yeah. They call it climate migration. And they say a lot of people say it's already happening in Miami in like the climate gentrification. But you nailed it. The people that are really going to feel it that already are. I mean, the countries that are feeling the greatest impacts of climate change are actually the ones that contributed to it the least because they were developing, right? And in terms of just disadvantaged communities, like the you have disasters and you can have the same impact, the same disaster hit the same area, but who are the people that are going to be okay? They're the people that have cars that can go stay in a hotel. Like
yeah.
it's a third of our state evacuated because they were worried about Hurricane Irma. Do you know that? They were,
A
and I heard,
third.
yeah, and I heard like a lot of my mom friends. No offense to them, they were like, I can't handle no AC, so I'm leaving. Like, um,
Wow.
and I mean, okay, but I like to compare that to how many people have a house and they have a mortgage on that house that before the end of the mortgage it's going to be underwater, and they live in the house. They don't care. They're like, I have my view. I mean, the waterfront properties are always going to be and always they're just so much more expensive, and it's limited, those properties, and everybody wants to live on the water. So, and they're building, I mean, the newer buildings on the intercoastal, they're building them so much higher and so much more robust that those people are going to
That's
be
good.
okay. Like, really, I mean,
Good.
look at the condo collapse. Like, what that's doing is people who, like, it's displacing people in that, they're in affordable housing, and it's affordable because it's old and it's falling apart. Like, those are the only affordable
Yeah.
places to live. And then they're getting rid of those, right? It's just more problems for a
It's
lot of
so
the work that
sad.
I do is equity. Like, I love to work on data, like maps, making really colorful maps of where the vulnerable populations are in terms of socioeconomics, but also in terms of like flood risk and climate risk. And it's like it's maps are so great to tell that story of look at this data. These people are in trouble. What are we doing to help them?
I heard a while back, I'm not sure if it's correct or not, but I heard down in Fort Lauderdale and Miami that they weren't issuing 30-year mortgages anymore for new buildings that they were building, like hotels and all of that kind of stuff, apartment buildings. I heard that the banks are not giving out those 30-year mortgages because they don't think that the properties are going to necessarily survive or, are more of a risk. So, do you know if there's, you know, if that is an issue or if there's insurance companies that are no longer covering any of these areas because it's obvious that you're basically building in a floodplain at this point?
I've heard that too, Sammy, and I've definitely read it in different like articles. I don't know someone personally that's had that experience. I mean, it's definitely, it's pretty easy to get a mortgage in most places. It's really, those older homes, because right now everything has to be up to code. If you're in a flood zone, you have to build higher than the 100-year flood, which is usually pretty high. Like it's pretty,
Okay.
so it's really the older homes that are the most in trouble that are, originally in low-lying area. And like what you said about the way that South Florida was developed, I mean, it was a swamp, and then that's why we have thousands of canals, because they dredged, everyone lives on a canal. They dredged the canals and they took that fill and then they filled, the houses, but that soil is swamp soil. It doesn't matter that we built on it. It didn't forget. It's
For
made up as
real.
topsoil. So I mean, everything west of I-95 was a swamp, and then it got dredged and drained. And I saw another article about just, like I mentioned, the groundwater and the soil when it's during the wet season, it's rainy, it's like saturated with water, and that water, it causes what's called hydrostatic pressure, because water has a lot of pressure, and it can, like, you see foundations cracking. I mean, there's a lot of issues with having wet soils more and more per year. And like the water is all around us. It's coming from the Everglades, from the west. It comes from underground. It comes from the sky. It comes in from the ocean, the salt water. So that's a problem with our water supply, because it, contaminates it, but also because the our freshwater aquifer, the drinking water supply, it like floats, right? Because it's fresh, it floats on top of the dense salt water, because the salt water actually comes in underneath. I have a graphic
Okay.
for it. I'm going to show graphics.
Yeah,
So
that's
there's just
definitely
water from every
something
direction.
something
Yeah.
to worry about is it's limestone, it's porous limestone.
Yep.
So it's
Exactly.
all just seeping up from underneath. So you can make as many pumps and as many seawalls as you want, but it's not going to stop the rise from underneath, no matter what we do, as far as, you know, let's build a wall, like that's not going to do the trick. I mean, I've seen so much footage of people's yards and parks and stuff, just little lakes, ponds or whatever just popping up in the middle of people's yards when it's sun shining outside. It's just coming up through the ground,
Yeah.
and what can you do to stop that? I mean, besides like huge, mitigation and changing the way that we live our lives, like on just like a very like logistic scale, like building up is the only thing that we could do. Like you said, building higher.
Yeah, building higher, but also like more naturally. Like I think that there's a lot of really cool projects now where, you don't have to build a seawall. You build like a really tall berm and you can put little oyster reefs on it, and you can be more creative and make it more beautiful and natural. So I
It's
think it's
good.
going to be,
Anything we
there's
can do.
different threats everywhere, all over the world. And so you can't, it's not like a one size fits all solution, but there's a lot of really cool, like resilience is the word we call it in the field, right? Like resilient redesign, where you look at an area and you can say, what can we do to make this, withstand disasters and other creeping threats like sea level rise. And yeah, it takes creativity and also some good engineering.
In the chat here, my friend Chid, he is in Canada. He said it's actually one of his company's MOs is creating buildings and infrastructure that is future ready to deal with climate change. I am so glad. I am so glad that
Yeah,
your company is also working on that because it's so much easier to plan ahead than to have a disaster and then have to scramble to try to fix that disaster. It's more expensive, it's more stressful, there's more loss of life and property. So if everybody's just kind of thinking of what we can do to move forward and to be ready for it. I mean, people denying that this is even happening is ridiculous. And I know that as far as the scientific community goes, and the the new regulations and stuff like that, like it doesn't matter that people are sitting there denying it at this point. I feel like having those regulations put in place by Florida, like, hey, build up. I don't care if you believe it or not. Build up anyway. You have to. It's the rules. So
exactly,
that's
exactly.
good. You know that at least the powers that be are trying to do something. Although I remember a few years ago, I forgot who it was, but they were saying that they weren't allowed to say climate change and sea level rise in Florida. Can you
Yeah, that
explain
that
more
happened
about?
to
I
me.
forgot the details, but yeah, explain to me what that was all about, like the pushback from the government.
It was something in the state government because I was working on a project with the state and we made a video about climate change and then they like we made the whole video and they got the guy was like he called me he's like Karen I'm so sorry but you have to edit the video and take out like certain mentions like we had to it was really bad we had to redo some of like we had to take out some things from the video. It was just the administration at that point, so
They
it was
just
really
didn't want the
unfortunate. I can
verbiage.
confirm that.
It was the specific verbiage, like the words. They didn't want you saying it because it would spark fear, or they were trying to deny it was happening. Like, do you understand what the reason was for trying to stifle your research?
Um, I mean, it wasn't my research. We were interviewing people. I guess it was research, but
Well,
yeah, I
the
think that
presentation
I
of your
can.
research, I
Yeah,
guess,
I guess
forced it.
I can only guess that. Yeah, they didn't. You know, it's just like the Trump administration wasn't really. You know, like they weren't putting climate change and they just try to scrub those words because they want to deny it. I don't know. I don't know for sure, but by the
That's
way, good job, Chit,
craziness.
your friend, on the work that he does. That's really awesome.
I know it's
And
fantastic. What is it specifically that you do, Chid? Put in the chat too. It's some kind of environmental something or other. Please tell us specifically what it is that you do in the chat.
And you know what you were saying before, Sammy, about like just how preparing rather than reacting, it can save, you know, money, time, lives. There's actually research, like a lot of my work is working on FEMA grants to fund these resilience projects. And it's nice because you
Excellent.
actually get, you know, I've gotten $10 million here, 30 million there to actually, you know, shovels in the ground protect different
That's so
utilities and things like
great.
that. But the studies on these different because you have to show that they're cost effective, and that's why FEMA gives all this money. They're giving $4.5 billion right now in grants for different they call it pre-disaster mitigation, and the reason
Oh,
they're
that's
doing it is
great.
because on average every dollar that they invest in the pre-disaster mitigation is saving $6 that would have spent you know when FEMA has to come in afterwards you know
Wow.
so it's
That's
really
huge.
I think that's such a big problem because everywhere there's cities and counties that are just so spread thin and they're just trying to you know use the budget they have to put out fires and do what you know is pressing right away and it makes it so much harder to actually invest into something longer term.
You know, and this is not the first time nor second time that this has happened in the world. I mean, if you look and see how many sunken cities that there are, especially along the Mediterranean, Egyptian cities, Greek cities, you know, the water level has rose so many times, and we're it's obvious that we are expediting this right now with our human carbon footprint. But it is just crazy to think about. You know, like one of the articles that we talked about on Monday in our weird news thing was about this sunken Egyptian city that's now under, you know, like 30 feet of water, and it was an entire functioning city back in that time. And now it's, covered in water. And it's really neat that we can actually go down there and dig these things up and try to, reimagine what it was like. But just thinking about how many places existed that no longer exist as a result. So who knows, in a couple hundred years, Miami, it's going to be like, wow, remember Miami? That was really neat, like people used to go there on spring break all the time, and like who knows what the map is going to look like. The map changes constantly. People get so stuck thinking that because the
Yeah.
map looks a certain way that this is how it's going to be forever. But when we look back at maps of Pangea and we look up, at how the continents shift and move, it's we're still shifting and moving. It's just on such a slow scale that it's hard for us to understand that things are still in motion, things are still moving. Sometimes things happen fast where you can see that change, and sometimes it's, like the frog in the pot of boiling water, just little by little by little. So,
I'm gonna show you a map. I'm gonna pull it up that shows what like Earth what like North America looked like during these different periods you're talking about. Hold on, it's in a different PowerPoint. Give me a sec.
yeah. Well, Chid actually says that he manages an environmental division of an engineering firm. It's a global firm, but I am a
Oh,
contaminated site specialist by trade. Very cool. That's a very important job. Thank you for investing your time and energy into making sure that things are not as contaminated as they as they can be. I guess it's definitely very important. So
okay, I found the slide.
that's good. Okay, fantastic.
Share your screen. Okay, so you can see it?
No.
Oh, hmm. Oh, okay, no, sorry, I have to pick which one. Screen two, go. Window. I don't know why it's not working.
Weird.
I'm clicking which screen, and I click there. It's not letting me click anywhere. Aw,
Oh, that is too bad. Really?
that's so weird. Oh, share. I just had to drag it down. It's working now,
There.
right?
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
So you see this, okay, so like over Earth's geologic history, the sea level has changed 200 feet. Like basically, so on the left is like what North America looked like during the last ice age, and sea levels were, I remember the exact number, they were 20 feet lower, right? Because all of that 20 feet of water wasn't in the ocean, it was in land ice. And then rewind to the picture on the right, and that's the last interglacial, and that's where almost all the land ice was melted. And so sea level was it was more than 100 feet higher, right? I have it in the
Wow.
notes here. So, I mean, this is like the shorelines, like you said, Pangea going even further back, but these things are cyclical because you have the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Obviously, that's causing the greenhouse effect and trapping heat. So then the temperatures in the air go up, the temperatures in the ocean go up, then you have this thing called thermal expansion because things are hotter and they shake around and move the molecules move faster and get bigger. So there's actually it's not just the ice melting, but the actual volume of the ocean increases when it's hotter.
Interesting.
But when you look at this CO2, I mean, it hasn't been this high in 800,000 years. I mean, it's at like 420 parts per million. And so the temperature and sea level hasn't caught up yet with those other, it's they call it in the pipeline. Like it's all of that heat. Even if we cut off everything today, we stopped burning fossil fuels altogether, no transportation, no electricity, or all renewable. Um, it's still we're still committed to a certain amount of warming and sea level rise because that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it's there. It's going to keep doing its thing. So I mentioned like those projections too. while I'm here. So this is like in Southeast Florida, we have a climate compact with 4 counties from the Keys up to Palm Beach County, and they get together and put together these projections of like, so see how I was saying the high from NOAA, it does go for that's just 2120 here, but it's getting it could be up to they have 14.6 feet. So and the uncertainty as we go out into the future, you could see like they call this the fat tail. It increases the uncertainty.
Jeez. That's the thing with the uncertainty too. We only know what we've observed so far, but we've never observed as humans something like this. So how can we
Exactly.
know for sure? I mean, I don't think 20 years ago when Al Gore was like, "We need to do something," and like he was all saying this shit, did we think that there was going to be like major melt events this fast like we've had especially this past year? And like giant chunks of Antarctica's ice shelves falling off and everything. Like I feel like it's is so uncertain, and the more that
Yeah.
things start melting, the faster that they start melting, which just increases everything. So I'm sure that there is some kind of, mathematical equation to come up with different possible scenarios. But I mean, it could be
Yeah.
really
The
bad. It could be worse than we even think.
Exactly. I mean, there is an equation that is, this curve is modeled on, but it's just basically using, some the land ice melting and the thermal expansion. There's so much uncertainty, like you said, with some of these collapses, and also there's like the methane collapse, and methane
Oh,
is even stronger than carbon dioxide.
yeah.
So there's a lot of unknowns that it could get up to this extreme, and it's not going to be this like simple smooth curve. We know this over like thousands of years ago that there were pulses where it could rise several feet in a short amount of time. So it's definitely there's limitations in these models. There's a lot of uncertainty. And while I'm just going to go through a few more of these slides because I have them open, like remember we were talking about the elevations? Like here's
Yes.
Miami. So this dark brown is actually a ridge. So like the highest elevations in Miami are actually, right along the coast. And then the blues are like the really, really low lying areas where um, look at Miami Beach. It's really bad. And
Oh, that's
that
really
area
bad.
to the south is just it's all undeveloped anyways. Like this dotted line is the urban development boundary.
Okay.
Does this not make sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah.
why is the in Miami? You said it has some of the highest elevation closest to the coast. How is that? Is it like reef buildup, basically?
Yeah, all of Florida is a limestone platform. So it's everything. Yeah, it's just the natural geology is that this is a natural ridge from that
That's so
limestone.
interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have expected it to be that high as close. I would have thought that more inland it would have been built up a little bit more. But
Yeah,
what
Broward
do I
County
know?
is different, but this is another view. You can see my other screen, right? The planet.
Yes.
So, and this is another picture I like to show because when all that, like you were talking about Egypt, when all of the if all of the ice, like Greenland, Antarctica, everything melted, the sea level would rise 213 feet, which is it would cover the Sydney Opera House and the Sphinx. They'd be underwater. And like
Oh
that
my
limestone
god.
platform I was talking about, this is what that is. It's actually in the Gulf, it goes out another 200 miles. So like when sea levels were
Wow.
lower, everything here was exposed. But
Interesting.
the reason we have these coral reefs and these barrier islands is because things have slowed down so dramatically, like over human recorded history. That's why we're just like, oh, we draw these lines on the map and they never move, right? But I wanted to show you the map of Broward County. Hold on.
Please. That's my county.
Yeah. So this is what the elevations are. So see the dark green is above 12 feet. So there's your Coconut Creek right there. That's the map on the left.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm calling my mom and telling her that she lied to me. No, that's really Interesting that it's that high. Is it because of the fill that they put in when they built it, or is that just natural?
I think it's natural. I'm pretty sure. I mean, they filled it like, with the canals, but they didn't fill it, more regionally. It was more locally to what worked. So, yeah, you could definitely see like moving to the south, it gets way, 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 way lower. And then there's this little green ridge here in Hallandale Beach, Hollywood. And then on the right is the depth to water table. So that's like what I was talking about with, can you see it okay? I'm looking in the video. It look
I can't.
okay.
It's cropped a little bit over.
Yeah.
I'm missing a little bit on the right hand side, but there we go. Oh, that's even better. Thank you.
Uh, I'm gonna try something different. Wait.
It's me.
I'm gonna share. Now I'm getting better at sharing screen. Share a window, and I'm gonna use. Okay. How about this? That's way better, right?
Nope, that's worse actually.
Really?
Yeah, it cut out more of the text on the right.
Okay. Well, I'll just stop there for now. I've shown too much.
No, I'm so glad. I love being able to see, have visuals of what it actually looks like. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah, and so the water table though, that map is basically follows the elevation. So like the highest like here in Coral Springs, that the land is 12 feet. Well, the water table is not part like the water table goes up when the land goes up. It kind of follows. It's
Okay, that
interesting.
makes sense. Real quick, we have a question in the chat. Given our current needs on the electrification of the economy, what are your opinions on the replacement of burning coal with natural gas until we can get to a point where renewables and nuclear can fulfill our needs?
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the energy consumption, it's not like it's my expertise. It's it's more they call it resilience is my thing, sustainability. I mean, I think that lowering emissions in any way, if it's the lesser of two evils, go for it,
Okay.
right?
But what we do know is not burning coal is probably the best thing that we can be doing right now.
Yeah, or just at least doing it in a clean way. Like there's some places where they can actually take the emissions and like put them underground or something.
Yeah,
Injection.
interesting. But, as far as natural gas goes, there's a lot of controversy as far as extracting that. Sometimes it can be done in more humane ways to the earth, but some. Thank you. Dusty just readjusted, so we should be able to see your slides better now that we shrunk that little window down. So if there's anything else you want to pull up, but yeah, as far as that goes with extracting that, especially in the states, it's not being done properly, in my opinion. They're just going to these small towns. They're just blasting the earth, tearing it up. It's poisoning people's water supplies. It's causing earthquakes and all of this stuff. I don't feel like that is something sustainable that we should be focusing on, but maybe at least as a bridge from coal, to something more renewable like wind and solar and hydroelectric and all of that. That would be a better route to go. But right now, seems like we need to find some way to decrease our dependence on the things that are hurting the earth the most. Shid
Yeah.
says, my personal opinion is that we could or should immediately halt the use of coal for production of electricity in lieu of natural gas until renewables and nuclear can catch up.
Yeah.
So, well, yep, halting coal. So
And it's
that sounds good.
like there's this book that's really amazing and you can go to the website if you just Google Project Drawdown and it's 100 solutions. Like drawdown is the point where, like I mentioned, the carbon dioxide concentration is like 420 something parts per million. So where we actually go to the point where it starts to decrease the carbon dioxide concentration. So the real contributors to future carbon emissions, like transportation and energy usage, are actually not. I don't remember the exact percentage, but there's so much of the it is from like refrigerants. Those are such a big deal because they have there's something called global warming potential. So carbon dioxide has one. Methane, I mentioned, it depends how long you're looking at how long it stays in the atmosphere, but whether it's over 75 or 100 years, like it could be 100 times the carbon dioxide. Um, but so
Jeez.
these refrigerants can be the thousands. So those are really bad. And they even have in the book like education of girls and helping educate girls about, giving them options for birth control, like those because of future, population growth is a big one. And building materials, like all this construction is just insane. I mean, especially in South Florida, it drives me crazy how they keep like building stuff and knocking it down. I don't know if you remember when we in high school they built this brand new plaza in downtown Fort Lauderdale called the Riverfront. It was really
Oh yeah.
nice and it had like a movie theater and clubs and bars and restaurants. They just
Yeah.
knocked it down. The whole thing.
What? They did? Really?
Yeah.
Why? That
For
wasn't even that. What was that? 25 years, maybe? That's
Yeah, they
crazy.
just knocked it down because they wanted to make some more money and build something new and flashier. And also in the Hard Rock in Hollywood, there was this beautiful plaza. It had a rooftop bar. It was just the best plaza. It had an Irish pub and a comedy club. I loved it. I loved going there. It was all outdoors. I went there one day because my kids are in School of Rock and they had a show, and I wanted to walk around the plaza. And I'm like, where is it? And the lady at the info desk, she's like, oh, we knocked it down. We're building a guitar shaped hotel. And I was like, what?
Really?
And I hate that thing. I pass it on the turnpike, and I'm like, ugh,
Really?
because it was really nice what was there before, and that is so wasteful to just knock the whole thing down. I mean, if we're gonna develop, great, let's just leave it there. And they just wanted to make
Yeah,
a
it's
guitar
so
shaped hotel.
wasteful. I mean, I've
Yeah,
been throughout Europe and Asia and lots of different places, and some of these buildings have been there for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. Why do we need to just knock shit down? It's so wasteful of resources and time and money. I don't.
concrete,
I
like
I
all
don't
these things
understand.
are just it's ridiculous. That irritates me. So yeah, it's not just emissions. There's a lot of things that are just messed up that just have to do with waste. I mean, things are being waste water. You mentioned the water shortages. Out west in areas like I would. The wars of the future are going to be over water. Water is just going to keep.
Yeah.
Everything that's being taken out has been accumulating for thousands of years, and then we're just taking it out, and they call it tragedy at the commons when all the farmers are like, let's just try to go deeper and get as much out before anyone else can, you know and
Oh man. And
yeah, it's going to be
speaking
hard.
of Florida changing too, you were talking about Fort Lauderdale, them knocking all that down. Something that I find very interesting is back before we were born, 60s and 70s or whatever, the Fort Lauderdale Beach, A1A, I believe it was like a 4 lane road. There was 2 lanes on each side. And the beach itself, the actual beach, was way longer. I remember as a kid, my parents didn't want to go to Fort Lauderdale Beach. They would rather go to Pompano because the beach was shorter. And my mom's knees and everything, she didn't want to walk on the huge, super long Fort Lauderdale Beach. And they have chopped the road. Now the road is a 2 lane road instead of a 4 lane road. And the beach itself has eroded so much that it is, I don't know. I mean, you might know better than I do, but it appears to be maybe a third of the size that it was when we were kids. And I know a lot of
Yeah.
that is from hurricane erosion and such, but it's not helping right now. And just seeing that in my lifetime, just being like, wow, when my parents first moved to Florida, there was so much more space, more road, more beach. And now all of a sudden they had to move the road in because the beach was disappearing.
Yeah.
So are you seeing a lot of those kind of things, like you living there your whole life? Have you noticed visually a lot of that changing?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many beach nourishment projects. I mean, in Miami Beach, they did a huge one in the 80s, and it's holding up pretty well. But they call it erosion, but I took a coastal hazards class at FAU, and and they were saying it's actually barrier island migration, because this is very natural. Like seasonally, all along the coast, you have the barrier islands. Like during the winter, they kind of move back, and they move back and forth, and they're supposed to move. They're supposed to break up. They're supposed to, you're not supposed to build on them. They're supposed, because they're not supposed to stay the way that they are. They migrate. So it's not erosion. The islands are just doing what they're doing. But definitely, you know, the all the inlets and the storms. I mean, there's a lot of erosion. Is so it's such a complicated thing. I tried to do my dissertation on it and I gave up. It's like
Really?
the hardest thing to model, in my opinion.
Oh, wow.
Erosion, because like what's the impact of sea level rise on erosion? It's so hard to tell. But obviously it's going to make it worse. But how much worse? And like, what's the beach profile going to be? But they call it scarping, where like the beach goes out and there's like a little edge. That's what, like, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like usually the beach profile is supposed to be like nice and smooth, but if it goes and all of a sudden there's like a little cliff and you have to like jump down it, so that's a bad sign of erosion too if you see that.
Gotcha. Oh, man. When I was out there visiting a few years ago, I was visiting Doc and we were driving down Fort Lauderdale. And there was a part of the road that they had a bunch of cones and they were rerouting everybody around because the water had just, I don't even know if it came from underneath or where on earth it came from, but A1A, part of it was just covered in water. And it was stressful for me because I was like, I have never seen that before. It wasn't raining. It didn't appear to be a puddle from a rainstorm. So, I mean, just every time I go back, I feel like I'm noticing small changes that it just makes me really sad. It's my home. It's my home. And even though I haven't lived there for a really long time, I still have a lot of love for my home, and just seeing everything changing so much and people scrambling to try to figure out what they're going to do is just, it's sad. But hey, at least where we're from, it's higher elevation, so the odds of that actually being affected in any remotely near future doesn't seem like that's imminent threat. But what happens if Miami keeps flooding out so bad? What is going to happen? What is it going to look like in 100 years? What do you feel like in 100 years the fate of Miami will be? What ideas do you have of this?
If things are going the way that they're going, the only people that will still be in Miami will be the people who can afford to live there.
That's fair. Is it going to be like Venice? People are going to have gondolas going around to
Yeah,
go
I mean,
grocery
at that
shopping.
point, everything might be so contaminated that it's not, it wouldn't be enjoyable for them to live there anyway. But if there were some nice areas left, like, if you can afford to pay for everything that you need, because I don't know, at some point there's basic services, right? Utilities, water, power, all that. I mean, when is that? I see some tipping points where things are going to change. It could be a really big hurricane. It could be, like you said, where they're not giving out mortgages, or, insurance rates are actually limiting property values, because the market here is crazy. I mean, it's hot. It's been so hot. People
Really?
are, yeah, I mean, because that's, thinking long term, you know, I, you're saying 100 years. I mean, that could be, 10 plus feet. That's what I'm imagining. But, in our lifetime, and I think that it's not like there's no hope left for us. I do feel like with technology, there's so many strides. I was really annoyed when I think it was one of the guys that went to space. It was like either Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. I can't even tell the difference. Like what? No, no, no. It was Bezos. He was on the news, and he was like saying how this is so important because we're going to send all of our garbage and our waste into space, and like this is going to somehow down the road help climate change. And I thought that was so stupid, but at the same time, like, okay, we're making a lot of strides, and maybe there will be some kind of band-aid fix. I mean, it's not going to solve all the problems. The carbon dioxide in the ocean is causing coral reefs to disintegrate, right? Or all the like calcium limestone things. Like you can't
Yeah.
stop that. But just to cool the planet and keep the sea levels from going out of control, if there's something we can do, like a band-aid fix, yeah, there might be unintended consequences, but maybe we'll find some way, and out of desperation, we'll do it. I was like, so I was mentioning, different PhD attempts like modeling erosion. One of the ones that I originally wanted, because I did my master's and my PhD at FAU. And for my master's, I wanted to look at something called iron fertilization. And there was this guy named, I think his name was like John. He had like a funny nickname. It's like Johnny Appleseed or something weird like that. This was a long time ago. But anyways, so there's these places in the ocean, especially around Antarctica, and they call them high nutrient, low chlorophyll. And because like some of the biggest carbon sinks is putting carbon in the ocean through photosynthesis from all the algae, right? So if you dump, and the one limiting nutrient in these areas is iron, and you only need like a teeny bit, and you could cause like a huge algae bloom because the only thing limiting, like there's a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus and all that other stuff, and they just need iron. So they take these boats and they just dump iron into the ocean, and it causes these massive algae blooms. They suck up tons of carbon dioxide, and then it just sinks to the bottom of the ocean floor. So yeah, you're eco tinkering. That's what they call it.
Interesting.
Like, it's super controversial, and they're not. I don't think that they're doing it anymore, and whatever. But these are things that, you know, if we get desperate enough, maybe, if there's no, if the ocean is all messed up anyways. I mean, there's just so many threats and so many unintended consequences. But I feel like in the future, it's just going to be, what are the things we can do to make the biggest difference to just keep sea levels at bay and to keep our, temperatures from going crazy.
It just seems like it's going to have to get so blatantly bad, falling on everybody's faces for a lot of these huge corporations that run the fucking world to actually
Yeah.
choose to do something. And that's
They're
so
not going to choose.
disappointing.
Yeah, no, they're not going to ever choose it if it's not, their bottom line is their profit. They're profit driven. Why would they're not going to choose something that doesn't bring in more profit? So I think that
Horrible.
that's really the what's going to force them. Like we talked about those disadvantaged people, like people that are working minimum wage, they're getting so impacted by this. Like maybe one of those tipping points, like I mentioned, will be when like they're so, I don't know, spread thin and incapacitated from all these issues that they can't show up to work or do their job. And the profit driven companies that rely on them are like, oh shit, we need to, keep our workers in some kind of conditions so they can do work. Like maybe that's what it will
Maybe.
take.
Or they'll just replace everybody with fucking robots with AI and be like, oh, sucks for you guys. Walmart just
Exactly.
recently apparently is taking away all of their checkers. They're just putting in like self checkouts at most
Who
of the
would?
Walmarts. Walmart.
Walmart.
Yep. So rather than have to pay a bunch of cashiers, they're like, we'll just make a bunch of robots and everybody can do their own shit. So when it comes down to it, I think that I'd like to think that they would want to change their practices to make it work for their employees better, but something tells me they're just going to find another way around that. It's all a scramble for the dollar. And there, of course, there are some companies that are eco friendly and do care. But as far as the biggest ones that actually control the way that things are run, I mean, just busting out the oil industry right now, like that That is huge. There is so much money in oil right now, and it's all over the world. And the richest people in the world are the oil tycoons. So, hell no, they don't want to lose that wealth. They don't want to stop accumulating, which is crazy because they already have billions of fucking dollars. Like, you need more billions? Like, just call it good. Hey, I'm sitting on $86 billion. Like, okay, let's make some changes in the world. But it seems like everything is so motivated around money and power that the humanity has been lost. Compassion, which is a really important human trait, I think is getting lost in the shuffle, and it's getting hidden behind all of this greed. And when it comes down to it, are we going to do anything as a species to be able to fix this situation? Like, I honestly don't think so. I really have lost a lot of faith in humanity. Now, as far as individual humans like yourself and like all of us in the chat here right now who actually really care and we want this world to be a better place, like, sure, we still have that compassion and that empathy and that human trait that is a more evolved perspective at this point. I feel like it's like a bunch of monkeys with tools fighting over land and power. You know, it's a much more unevolved mindset that I feel like is running our planet, and they're clinging to it as hard as they can, and they don't want to let it go. And an infrastructure change would be huge. It would cost so much money, and there'd have to be so much funding and so much change for a huge infrastructure change. Like, who's going to be willing to shell that out? Who's going to be willing to take a hit so that they can put billions of their dollars into doing this? You know, I wish humans were different, but I've really lost a lot of faith in people doing the right thing because they're like, well, I'm old. Why does it matter? I'm going to be gone. It doesn't even matter. We'll let the next generation deal with it. And then we'll let the next generation deal with it. And then before you know, it's gotten out of control and it's too late. It's really disappointing. I'm disappointed in humans and the way that they are reacting to this like extreme crisis. It's a crisis.
It's a crisis. Yeah.
It really is.
I mean, I remember reading that COVID is like a dress rehearsal for climate change. And if this is the dress rehearsal, like, yeah, I guess I am scared because I mean, I think it's really and what's happening now with all of the, AI and these different algorithms that are just trying to like sell, right? Did you see that Netflix show about that? I can't remember what it was called, but like we
Oh,
are
yes. The social dilemma.
yeah, I think that,
Mm-hmm.
that's the one where the algorithm, right? He's like
Yeah.
so I mean, when I watched that, it just really struck me that we're, like they say at the end, we're the users. The only time you call your customers users are with drug dealing and the internet. I mean, they say that at the
Yeah.
end, and it's, we're not, the customers are the advertisers, and they're just, the algorithms are just doing whatever sells. And if what sells is lies, and put dividing people, like that's what gets people excited. I mean, it's just crazy what's happening out there with the anti-vaxxers and the anti-maskers. I just
So bad.
I can't, I'm so over it. Like, I don't even want to talk about it. Let's just not even talk. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's just
But
stupidity
how
is
can you be
fueled
saying
by
this?
more stupidity. It's just
It's
like
so selfish.
and it is pretty much a when in Rome kind of situation. Is a lot of people that are in areas that are undereducated, that are fueled by belief systems. Let's just put it that way. Various belief systems. I feel like in areas where people are thinking for themselves more and are actually interested in the data and the science, that's where more like illumination is coming from. But in some of these other places, it's an echo chamber. And like you're saying with the algorithms, it's like, oh, if you Google climate change in, North Georgia, it's going to say is a hoax. That's going to be one of the first things that comes up. And a lot of the pages it's going to show you is going to be geared towards your area and your demographics, and they're going to force feed you what they want you to see. So it's crazy where we've come right now, where there's such a social divide and a moral divide, and I wish that I thought that we all want the same things in the end. You'd think that all humans would want to preserve the planet and have it be habitable for all of our generations to come. You'd think that there would be one common goal of everybody, but like you said, I'm not really feeling like there's that common goal anymore. Everything's so divided and people are so anti science now, which is just horrifying. I mean, I understand the counter argument of like science is like a religion too. We're just believing everybody that's doing the science. But guess what? You don't have the the tools at your house to do this like this research, vaccine research or whatever. So I'm going to have to just believe the fucking CDC because they have billions of dollars of research, Like we have to have some more trust in the scientific community. I mean, although anybody can be bought, anybody, can say whatever is wanted to be said, like you can buy just about anything that you want. But when it comes down to it, we have to trust the science because it's the only chance that we have. If we're sitting around just doing YouTube research and yelling about things, and shaking our fists at the sky, like that's not going to fix anything. So if this planet is to survive this, like these people have to just say, well, like just in case. It's like the just in case votes, or like, oh, I'll just believe in Jesus, get baptized just in case. I'm not going to believe in him the whole time, but as soon as I'm on my way out, like just in case. Can't we just in case with the environment and science?
Yeah.
That would be better than nothing. I would love to see that. But
Yeah, I
sadly,
mean, like there's an analogy to having insurance, right? You have insurance, you have fire insurance on your house just in case it burns down. Like here in South Florida, more than where you are, it probably won't, right? But I still have it.
just in case, you never know. Your toaster could go AWOL or whatever and, start going crazy. And there you go.
Yeah,
Now you got a fire. Like shit happens. We have to plan for eventual potential tragedies. We don't have to live in fear because of it, but just being aware of these things. So who is it
right.
hurting to just be like, yes, we should start making these steps in the right direction to try to heal the planet and try to do the right thing. But there's so
I
much
think
pushback.
yeah, awareness is the key. That's the key word. It's being aware and communication. We're talking about it now, and hopefully, Chit and everyone in the chat is gonna like talk. Just the more we talk about it. I mean, I feel like yeah, the stuff we've been talking about that's really depressing, and how people can be really selfish, and things are profit driven. There's so many things in this world that are really depressing, but at the same time, I look at how far things have come. I mean, since we were in high school, the hashtag Me Too, like all those boys in high school should be ashamed, really bad.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
look at BLM, right? Um, there's and even civil rights movements. I mean, and women's rights, like all these things that we've accomplished that we have so much to be proud of. I mean, it's not enough. There's still a lot of way to go, but I do a lot of stuff with um, personal growth and development groups that I feel like focusing on gratitude and on positivity and just being together and connected to people, it's what gets me through, and it helps me enjoy my life in the face of all of this. And that's what I have to do. Like it's really helped me. I've been through so much lately. My mom died in May. That was really hard, and I want to live on her legacy, which is peace and love. And so that's where it is depressing to think about all the terrible things happening out there, but you can't focus on that. I know so many activists that are angry, and their anger, it impacts their health.
Sure.
You can't
Yeah.
just walk around so angry at everything. It's yeah, there's the
I
situation
know.
on our planet is not ideal. There's a lot of bad things happening everywhere. Maybe we're doomed. And this is our life, and we're present. Like this is where we are right now, right here. And so finding in that, being here now, and being
Yes.
thankful that we can breathe, and that we do have what we have, and trying to help people that don't have in any way we can. That's really where I've been getting value out of my life lately.
You know what? Me too. Like I feel like you're saying exactly what is in my heart and what I've had to work through as well over time. I was really sad. I wasn't as much angry. I guess it was more frustration, but I was frustrated, I was angry, and I was fucking sad about what is happening, and reading the news and just seeing everybody being ridiculous. Like, I reached a point, it was probably about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where I, for the first time in my life ever, got what I would consider depressed. I'm not a depressive person. I'm a really happy, live in the moment person. And I was just looking around and watching at all these documentaries and just seeing how fucked up everything is. And it did affect my mental state. It really did. And I decided that I needed to shift my perspective. I needed to change because this is my one life that I have here. And am I going to be angry and stressed and disappointed every day of my fucking life and let that affect my attitude and what it is, the energy that I put out into the world? Fuck no. Like, I need to put out good energy. That's my role in this world, is to try to inspire others to live a good, happy life and to appreciate the things that we have while they're still here. So I went on a solo journey to Scotland, and I dealt with my shit, and I turned my frustration into acceptance. And it was a sad thing to let that go in a way, but I know that I can't single handedly fix the planet. I can't. It's not within my power to single handedly convince everybody to stop being greedy fucking assholes. So, you know what? It's like, I have to just accept that this is the way that it is. And hopefully, we will see some kind of positive changes in the end, but I can't count on that. So, I'm just going to go about my life and just, find joy in all the little flowers and all the little bees and everything while we've got them. And if I keep looking at everything in a depressive way, it's going to be gone. I know that in my heart of heart that humans won't make it too much longer, and that is super sad, and I still recognize it's sad. But as far as it, like, affecting me in that kind of, like, angry way where it affects my health and stuff, you're absolutely right. It does no good. We have to appreciate what we have and make the efforts that we can right now to try to make the world a better place. I know that I recycle and I compost and I do those things. And even though it's not going to magically save the planet, I still feel good about it. I feel like I'm doing what I can do in that moment instead of just putting it in a fucking landfill. We're not allowed to have styrofoam here in Seattle. And once you leave Seattle city limits, they have styrofoam, and I will ask specifically, like, can I please get my water in a glass that's not styrofoam? I will send it back as long as it's not going in the garbage. I'm like, I will send it back. And that's just the little things that I can do that make me feel like I'm doing my part, at least a little bit. But me or you or any of us, we're not going to convince people to moralistically do the right thing. But educating people and bringing it to people's attention, I think, is so important. And now we're seeing so many more articles and so many more documentaries. I mean, David Attenborough, like, dude, he is rapid firing right now. He is about the end of his life, man, and he is not wasting any time at all. He is just laying that shit out there so hard. So it is really good because he's not taking it from a political approach. He's taking it from, I have seen the planet a million times over. I've gone more places than anybody else has gone. And this is what I've seen in my whatever 92 years or whatever he's got. So I think that's helping as well. Having it not come from a place of political anger. It's just like, this is just what's happening. Take it for what it is. So there is movement happening. There's a lot changing as far as the levels of awareness. For example, which I actually want to hear what your take is on this. Last week or a week and a half ago or something, the climate report came out that it is unequivocally human caused. 14 different countries and hundreds of different researchers invested in this climate
I can see.
research. Yes, please tell me more about that, because that made me so happy to hear that was done and finally came out to the public.
It's actually, I think it's the fifth one. They've been doing it for a while now. They do it every few
Really?
years. They update it. Yeah. So, but I mean, yeah, it's every time it comes out, it's worse, dire predictions about everything that's going to happen. But it is very solid research based.
So
Um,
glad. I'm glad.
yeah, I mean,
I'm glad. But they said specifically humans. Humans are causing this. So, like, it is absolutely proven. Sorry, people that have their opinions about this, but the facts are this is caused by human carbon footprint.
it's very sad that we're still arguing about that. I mean, and I really
I
get,
know.
all these reports. There's so many. There's so many reports. There's information action gap. There's way too much information and data and not enough action. There's reports coming out all the time. Your story about going to Scotland, it's just so beautiful, and I really love that.
Thank you.
It's a real thing getting depressed, and I've actually seen some workshops. I have a few websites I can share with it, like helping people cope with these emotions they have about the climate crisis. And
That's
I'm
very
part of a
helpful, I'm
group.
sure.
Yeah, I'm part of a group. There's four of us, and we're creating a climate tarot deck. And I was never really into
Really?
tarot. Yeah, and it was actually someone I knew that reached out to me, and she was an artist, and she had a tarot reader and another artist, and they wanted a scientist. And so we've been meeting for over a year now, just trying to figure out how to make this deck in a way that people can learn about climate change, but also have like more of a, connection to it, not beyond just information and data and coming together
Wow,
and
that's
activism. And
awesome. I
yeah,
would
it's really,
love a copy of that deck when it comes out. I would love that. That's really cool.
yeah, I've gotten into tarot because I really like the how all the cards are something really positive, like something nice to start your day or just have something positive to focus on. Even those little sayings, you need something. Um, and what you say about like this is, we need to just be happy that we're here. Like, yes, the future generations, like nothing lasts forever, and at some point, you know, everything that's here won't be here. But in the meantime, we're here. We have this gift. Um, my mom lived on the beach, and she said that knowing that the beach, she had the ocean like right on her balcony, and she said this, knowing that this might not be here, like I could be one of the last people to enjoy this view. Like it makes me that much more honored to enjoy it and take advantage of it. And
Absolutely.
yeah, my boyfriend Jonathan and I, like, we've been talking about moving to the beach for that exact reason. I mean, yeah, you know, it's just so beautiful, and why not enjoy it for as long as we
Enjoy it
can,
while you can.
if
Yeah,
you can
I
afford
remember
it.
the moment where I realized that I had to shift my perspective, and I made a joke at the time, but then I realized it was not funny and it was not a joke. Me and Dusty were walking around in the forest out here. There was some kind of like nighttime glow event, and they had all these cool glowy things in the forest, and it was so nice. And we're having such a great time, and I'm in a great mood, and we're walking around, and there was this massive fern. We have so many ferns out here, and there was this beautiful, massive fern, and I was like, Dusty, look. I was like, look at this amazing fern. Isn't it beautiful? And I was like, say bye, fern. It's been nice knowing you. Bye, fern. Like, it was like, I was like, you're fucked. I had this moment of looking at this beautiful thing and being amazed by it and then being like, well, it's all fucked. Just say goodbye to it because it's going to be fucking burned to a crisp and gone before you know it. And it got me where I was like, I can't do this. I can't live like this. I have to look at the fern and say, look at this beautiful fern. I love you. I'm glad that you exist, rather than me immediately, my mind just went to, you're fucked. You're so fucked. It made me really sad. And I was like, ooh, ouch. Oh, shit. Okay. All right. We're getting a little bitter. We're getting a little tainted. I love this planet. and I travel so much and I love seeing the world. It is my goal in this world is to see as much of this world as possible. I love traveling and seeing different cultures and different kinds of plants and geology and architecture and all of these things, and just knowing that there is that end. It makes sense. There's always an end to everything. Nothing lasts forever, but I need to appreciate it in the moment and really soak it in rather than just think about it in such a sad, like, finite negative way. So that's when I was like, I gotta do something. I gotta go. I gotta do something and shift my perspective. And it really worked. I was on Loch Ness. I was on a boat tour on Loch Ness, and I was standing on this boat, and I was like, you know what? I don't want this anymore. I don't want this negative perspective anymore. And I just like visualized me just dumping it into the bottom of Loch Ness. And I was like, you've got to go. Like, you've got to go. I don't want to see the world like this anymore. I'm a really happy and positive person. I would say I'm realistic. I wouldn't say I'm overly optimistic, but I don't want to be pessimistic. It's okay to be realistic, but not have that negative pessimism attached to it. So I just dumped it out. And then I ended up going to the Isle of Skye, which was one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen with my eyeballs in my life. And I stood on the side of a cliff with the sun rays coming through the clouds and a waterfall, and there was some sheep, and it was just me standing on this cliff. And that's where I found the gratitude, was that moment where I was like, okay, I dumped everything out. There was a void in there. Now I'm filling it with gratitude for this planet. I am so lucky to be on the Isle of Skye, a place that has not been damaged by humans, with the freshest air and the freshest seafood and the freshest everything. And here I am. I am so lucky. And even though the world is going to suffer a terrible fate at some point in the future, we don't know when it will happen, but I am grateful to be here right now. And ever since then, that was years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, like, I have maintained that. And even though I watch David Attenborough's documentaries and it chokes me up, man, and I still feel it, I still have gratitude for what we have when we have it. I mean, even just a glass of water, like, daily. I have a glass of water and I'm like, I am so glad that I have this fresh water right now. So many people forget, cheers. People forget to give thanks for these things that we just take for granted. We're taking so much for granted right now. And as time goes on, like you said, people are going to be fighting tooth and nail over a glass of water. And that's not today, though. Today I have fresh water and I'm forever grateful for that. So just trying to live a happy life and appreciating the world as we know it right now, I think it's a good solid way to be, and we'll cross the bridges when we get to it. Mitigation is definitely the number one goal, is to try to stop these things from happening beforehand. But when it comes down to it, what can I do sitting here in Seattle, Washington, besides be grateful for what we've got. So I'm glad to know that you have a similar type of perspective, rather than angry and fearful and so stressed out about it. You're just taking it as it is and just trying to learn and educate other people, and that's your contribution, and it is a worthy contribution. I really think it
Yeah,
is.
so is yours. I mean, you're talking about it to your viewers here, and I think you're doing a lot. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I really, really wanted to have you on because I felt like it's a very important thing to put out there, and to give people the opportunity to hear the science behind it by an actual scientist, you know? Like, now I'm going to ask you, did anybody pay you for you to make your research sound different or change your research, or is this 100% factual information?
You know, when people ask, first of all, the answer is no. Nobody paid me to. This is all actual,
Good.
obviously. But
I know.
when I tell people what I do, sometimes people, the most popular thing is, some people say, when should I sell my house? That's the number one reaction. The number two reaction is, Oh, so you believe in climate change? Like people will say that. You believe in that? Especially if I'm traveling somewhere with those type of people. And
Really?
I have a response. You know what I say? I say, "Do you believe in thermometers? Do you believe in tide gauges? Like these are raw measurements that we're collecting. It's not like you can fake a thermometer reading. You know, like these are everything that's being
Gosh.
measured. It's like very basic. I mean, even back in the 1800s, there were guys like describing basic laws of physics and chemistry that they were like, this is the greenhouse effect. Like they knew this in the 1800s, Sammy. It's not like new information.
No,
It's
it's
like
not.
these are gases that you put them in the atmosphere and they trap heat. There's nothing to argue. That's like arguing against gravity. There's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
nothing to like. It doesn't make any sense.
But you know what? Watching what happened in the 80s with the aerosols, Aquanet and all that shit, that like they were causing holes in the ozone layer. And the world spoke up and said, "Oh fuck, we've got holes in the ozone layer. We have to do something. We're banning these harsh chemicals." And it repaired itself. And look at what happened when everybody just came together and said, "No more. We're not having this happen." And things have repaired. So it can be done. Will it be
Yeah.
done? Remains to be
Well,
seen,
it
I
could be
guess.
done for that particular problem. That
Yeah.
was solvable. I mean, a lot of it is irreversible.
Yeah.
Um, the ocean circulation is a really big problem. Like there's the Gulf Stream that it goes all the way through the Bahamas and it goes all the way up along the east coast to New England, and then when it gets to Greenland, it sinks because it's called the ocean conveyor belt. If you go around the oceans, like it takes hundreds of years, but like the water will sink and it will go and circulate around the continents along the floor, and then it will upwell and then go along the surface. And that's influenced by the atmospheric circulation. Actually, fish migration is a big part of like what influences that circulation. But another part of it, like especially the Gulf Stream, is that when it gets to Greenland, it has to, for it to sink, like it has to be more dense and it has to be more salty, right? Because to sink, so colder and saltier water will sink. Well, what's happening now is the water is getting warmer, so it's more buoyant, and then also because remember heat rises, and then also because all of near Greenland, all that ice is melting, and so it's diluting that salt water. So it's actually slowing down the Gulf Stream. And a lot of the sea level rise on the East Coast right now is related to that, especially if a hurricane comes. If you can imagine like a big hurricane, well, it happened last week, right? Like off the East Coast. And
Not
then
hard to
it's like a
imagine.
traffic jam because you have all this water that's trying to go north, and there's this hurricane, and it's like, no, I'm just going to spin the water in a circle, stay there. So like
Gotcha.
Hurricane Sandy was so bad, the water levels, it was crazy in South Florida because it was just a traffic jam all along the coast that the water couldn't get up there to Greenland to sink.
Gotcha. Ugh. Is this part of what's causing the dead zones that I've been hearing about recently? I've been hearing about the larger dead zones. Apparently, we have one that's off the coast of Washington here.
I mean, dead zones can happen. You mean with the fish kills,
Yeah,
like where the
where
hypoxia, there's no
where the
oxygen?
yeah, where the oxygen is just depleting and it's killing a bunch of things. Apparently, it's becoming more prominent from what I have been reading recently.
Yeah, the main reason it happens that I know of is related to like nutrients pollution. Like for example, in the Mississippi River, when there's a lot of water and flooding, and then all that nitrogen and phosphorus gets out into the Gulf, and it causes these like algae blooms, and then
Right.
everything, and then things die, and when they're decaying, they use up all the oxygen. What? Because right, it's oxidizing, and then
Yeah.
that's what when there's no oxygen, the fish just everything suffocates. So
But
that's what
this
I
one
know
that's off
about.
the coast of Washington, apparently it's not directly related to any of the like the flooding of the pesticides into the water or something like that. like I was wondering if it has something to do with the circulation of the movement of the ocean water and the jet stream just kind of stalling out in certain areas. I'm not too sure what the science is behind that, but it was pretty concerning to hear about this. And they're like, you know, okay, we've been hearing about these dead zones. Now we've got one off the coast of Washington. I'm like, oh, that's nice. Just add that to the parfait of fun that's happening these days, you know?
Yeah. If you have a big methane release, that causes it too, because there's methane, it just takes up all the air. There's no oxygen.
It might be underground methane then. That is a really good thought. Oh, speaking of methane, all the permafrost melting in Siberia right now and these huge methane pits. Oh man. That is very interesting. Like anybody that wants to deny that things are changing, all they have to do, I guess, is go to fucking Siberia and see what's happening over there. Because these pits are just they're huge. And now we've got all of the creatures and people of time with different various dead diseases that were buried in this permafrost, and now we have to worry about them, popping back up into existence. So on top of just the methane release, which is super harmful for the atmosphere, now we have to worry about diseases that we haven't seen in thousands of years coming back to the surface. Which, as we've seen right now, we don't handle pandemics well.
No.
Some of us handle it better than others, but yeah, that's definitely a freaky situation that we're experiencing right now. There's so many changes, and we keep hearing about all of these different things all the time. So it's not just like a generalized, like, yeah, the climate's changing, it's getting a little warmer in some places. We have had some of the craziest heat, some of the craziest fires. The rain in Greenland for the first time since history's been recorded. Obviously, it's not the first time
Undone.
ever, but since we've been recording history, it's the first time that it's rained. And that's just causing like exponential rates
The
of
feedback,
melting.
yeah, because when it rains, the water's dark and absorbs 90% of the heat, whereas a white snow surface is going to only absorb 10% of the heat. It's called albedo. So that's why it's that bad that it rained. Albedo.
It's so bad. I never knew that it was called albedo. It's like libido, but not quite.
Yeah.
Albino libido. That's all I remember it. But yeah,
So many
that's
random
happening these
vocabulary.
days, and then you've got Antarctica and all these huge chunks of ice just falling into the ocean too. But a lot of people don't see these things in their daily life. They just see their Walmart and their Applebee's and whatever. Like people's experiences of the world generally are more limited to the environment that they choose to stay in. And I think that's a big part of the problem is especially in the states. Europeans
Yeah.
tend to travel more, generally speaking. And a lot of people in the States, the people in Kansas and North Dakota and whatever, some of these smaller places, like, they don't really go many places for the most part. Very generalized term here, but a lot of them are just comfortable in their environments and they just know this little bubble that they've lived in their whole life and their, pappies lived there and that's just the way it is. But what about the rest of the fucking world? Like all you have to do is travel to see different things in this world. It's not very I don't want to say it's not very hard, but because sometimes it can be hard for people to travel, but it is very illuminating whenever people pick up and go somewhere else and see something different. And just here in Washington, man, so anybody that came to visit me in Washington, Mike Gallagher came out here a couple years ago and we blew his mind with the Mount Rainier. 14,000 plus foot volcano, and it just looms over the city because we're closer to sea level. It's gigantic, and the bulk of it is glacier covered. I mean, it is just one giant fucking glacier poking out of the ground. And after this summer, this is so fucked up. There is so much more exposed rock than ever. Like, people have lived here their whole lives and they're like, we have never, ever seen these rocks. I flew over it last month, a few weeks ago. I went down to Vegas and it was really cool, actually. I was sitting on the right side of the plane, which was awesome. But we flew directly next to it. Like it was right there. And I've flown a bunch of times in and out and I've seen it in the distance, but this time I was on top of it. And it was so horrifying because there is exposed rock on the top, the summit of this volcano. You should not have been able to see this exposed rock on this volcano. I forgot the exact percentage, but I think they said we lost like 40 or 60 or something like that percent of the glaciers just
Mm.
so far this year. It's huge. So, just that alone, like if you came here years ago and you come here now, there's a visual change that you can see. But some other people, that they're just not seeing it, so it's not as real to them. It's not as important because it's not
Yeah.
affecting them directly. They're like, well, sea level rise. I live in Oklahoma. That don't matter to me. Like, well, it should fucking matter. Like all of this should matter. Ooh, Dusty has a question actually in the chat. He says you mentioned glacial rebound earlier. Can you explain what that is?
Ooh, okay. More vocabulary. So glacial rebound is kind of like imagine a spring, right? That like if you stretch it out, it wants to go back, right? So when the glaciers were on top of North America, they were pushing the land down in certain places, right? And then it was kind of like pushing down a spring. And then when all the glaciers retreated, like things are moving in a different way to kind of rebound from like there's the land is still kind of slowly moving to rebound from the pressure of the weight of the glaciers.
That makes sense.
So some of the highest sea level rise rates are in around Virginia, like Norfolk, Virginia. And a big reason for that is the glacial, those glaciers that retreated, and then the land is also kind of still adjusting. So in some
So,
places it's
how
adjusting like
long is it?
sometimes some places the land moves up and some places it moves down. It just depends how it's adjusting.
Gotcha. How quickly can you see it? Um, like, can you measure the changes? Like, is it just like millimeters per year? Is it
Yeah,
micromillimeters or?
it, it's millimeters per year. So like sea level rise, the average is like it's 3.5 to 4 millimeters per year. And then in like in New Orleans and Norfolk, it could be triple that. I have that in one of my slides too. I think I have like what
Oh,
the
cool.
local versus global sea level rise.
That would be great.
You want to see it? It's in
Yes,
inches.
please.
All right, there's San
Hydra
Diego on
Gamer.
there.
Welcome, Hydra Gamer. I can't figure it out. Is climate change real? In fact, it is. Hydra Gamer, it is. We have a climate scientist, Karen Bolter, on right now. She is a sea level rise specialist, and she has been working with the data for quite some time. And there is definitely a shift in the climate right now. It is measurable. And here are some graphs to prove it.
Yeah, so this is this graph here. And by the way, the person asking if it's real, are thermometers real? Are tide gauges real? Because that's how we're measuring it. So like here's local sea level rise over the last 50 years. So you can see LA, San Francisco, Seattle, San Diego, all of the West Coast, the sea level rise in 50 years has only been 2.5, 3.5, 4 inches. So that's on the West Coast. Then you have Galveston, Texas, which is the highest at more than a foot. Norfolk, Virginia. New Orleans isn't on here, but New Orleans is in that area too, like 10 or so inches. And a big reason for that one too is because they're taking water out. And like they're when they take that the particular type of like delta soil in New Orleans, when you take the water out, it the land sinks because that water is actually volume. And by the way, I saw a comment about like how I was saying things in a very simple way, even though I'm a PhD. And I do that on purpose. Like when I've done 2 TED Talks and I was trained by the TED people to explain things in simple ways, like technical things. So you're right. I'm not going to, if I use a vocab word, I'll tell you what it means, like a sea level rise word. But I take that as a compliment, whoever said that.
No, absolutely. I completely agree because in order to get the information out and understood, using a bunch of gigantic words that the layman might not understand, that's not really doing your part to share that information properly. So I take it as a
Yeah, I
compliment as
mean,
well.
I'm showing this slide now because really, it's about communicating about sea level rise in a way that the people you're talking to are going to listen and it's going to be compelling for them. So depending on who I'm talking to, I'm just trying to get people to care. That's all, because I care and I think it's important to care about. Like I just want to, increase awareness and help people change their actions and be more prepared. So whether, they care about health impacts, there's a lot of health impacts we talked about. One problem in South Florida also and around a lot of coastal areas is that there's a lot of older homes still on septic tanks, and then you have them, these the wet groundwater where they're not filtering properly, and then you have a drinking water well right next to it. So health impacts and then disease vectors, obviously. Financial impacts, you can talk about how much, property value is vulnerable at 2, 3, 4 feet of sea level rise. You can talk about historic preservation, habitat loss like sea turtle nesting. We talked about equity and environmental justice. And also this picture here is my little George. He's big now. This is an old picture, but it's all about communication. We did a project where we had the kids stand in water levels that were equivalent to the sea level rise that they would see in their lifetime. And so, it's all about how to say it in a way that will resonate with someone. And that's why I think the maps are so important and actually I could, since I have my screen open, I can demo some of the maps.
Oh yes,
If
please.
These are my favorite, I'm going to show you I had them open. Can you see my screen okay now?
Yes,
I
perfect.
think you should. So I'm going to show you three of my favorite tools, and then so this one is called the NOAA Sea Level Rise. So if you just Google like SLR viewer, you get here, you click get started. And so see here, like, here, I'll try to make it a little bigger. On the left, there's like a slider bar. And so you can raise the sea level up to 10 feet and see what happens. So if we go to Seattle here, there's already green. So these are areas that are already um,
Wow.
sometimes flooding at high tide. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It does.
Because
They're
the
already vulnerable.
MHHW, yeah. And also the reason that they're green is because they're not, there's some kind of levee protecting it. So if it's called hydrologically connected. If the inundation levels are like connected, this is I usually don't see this much green. I haven't actually looked at Seattle. Oh,
Oof.
another cool thing is, look here. There's your tide gauge, this little droplet here. So, Windjammer Beach City Park. So you can actually, have you been to this park?
I haven't.
You can actually raise the sea level, and it shows you like with 2 feet of sea level rise, you can see what happens to that little windmill. 4 feet, 5 feet. See how it's going up and getting inundated?
Oh yeah. Oh wow.
So like with 10 feet, that's what happens to the windmill. It's cute. And then there's Jefferson Street Port, Townsend. So that's a cute little
Wow.
thing in it. But
That's
that
so
wasn't your tide gauge.
interesting.
So you can also, like, let's go somewhere.
So
This is
Alki
fine.
Beach is near me. I'm in West Seattle, and Alki
Where should I
Beach.
go then?
Um,
I can
let's
type it in. How
see.
do you spell it?
ALKI.
Alki. Alki Beach?
Yes.
No. It had Alki, Seattle. Here. So this is where
Yep.
you are? Okay, good.
That's
All right.
yeah. I used to work right on the beach actually, so I'm
Where
curious
do you
what
live?
that area would look like. I live on that same peninsula, but I'm in the like southeastern region of that peninsula. So kind of where
Oh,
those
I
green
see.
splotches are. I'm in Highland
Okay.
Park, so there's like that part of the river that kind of bulges out. I'm like due west of that like bulge.
Okay. Well, so look, that's what. So we'll go here. We'll go with 1 foot of sea level rise. So you can see like these areas like here that are green are not connected to the river. But see how there's an area here that's connected to the waterway and it's showing the blue.
Yes,
So
yes,
then 4 feet. So with 4 feet, that all of a sudden it changed from green, see, to blue because now
yeah.
it's actually connected. Like before, it wasn't, it was just a low lying spot, but it's not like the waterway can get over this little piece of
Right, right, right.
land, right? But then all of a sudden you get 4 feet and you have an issue. And then let's do 5, 6.
Oh,
Wow. What is that? Some kind of
wow.
port, like airport or port?
Uh,
Oh, it's the port. So the
yeah,
port is very low lying. Look, the whole terminal,
yeah, it
they should be
is.
worried.
Oof. Yeah, they
And
should.
then 8 feet,
Wow.
9 feet. Oh, and look at that. With that 9 feet, Lake
Wow.
Washington, all of a sudden.
Oh man.
But again, it looks like there's some kind of barrier here where it's not getting through. Oh, and then right? See? So it's really
That
cool
is
just to go
something.
around these and maps and explore the tools and kind of see. There's something else I want to show you. I
And
don't
what
know
is this
where
called
the,
again? SLR something or other?
yeah, SLR viewer.
Dusty, can you go ahead and put a link to that in the chat? That would be fantastic.
It's coast.noaa.gov/SLR. So okay, this red is high tide flooding. So this is areas already today. There's like a threshold by the National Weather Service that it's like usually around 1.7 feet, and you get like when the tide is higher than that, all these areas in red are flooded and they put out a weather alert.
Oof.
So this little guy here in Port Townsend, this is your okay, so your flooding for the high tide begins at 1.97 feet above mean higher high water, which is the higher of the high tides of the day. So this is a really cool tool too because I love flood days. I think flood days are really great. I have some of my maps that look out into the future because you can say, oh, 2100, what's going to happen further down the road? But in the meantime, like what's already happening now. If you want to talk to people that they're already seeing things, like these are already days per year where the water is higher than the ground. And so you can see on this graph here how since 1920, since this tide gauge has been here, they haven't really had flood days where water was higher than this 1.97 feet. And then all of a sudden, 1972, they got one. And then they kept getting, then they got eight
Uh,
back in the 80s. So you looks like your record was 2010, where you had 10 days of flooding, where
wow.
all these areas in red were flooded.
Oh, wow. That is
And
so
so,
interesting. What a really cool site to
yeah,
visualize all of it.
there's also social vulnerability. So if you click here, you can see there's a legend too. There's so many cool things. Like you can change the base map to make it streets. You can change the how transparent things are. But
That's awesome.
with the social vulnerability, if you click the eye here, it tells you where it came from. Like this is from census data, but I don't know where the legend is. They changed this template. Facebook. No, don't download it. You can download all the data too, but how am I missing the legend? Well, the darker red is more socially vulnerable. I know that.
Okay.
And there's marsh migration. So there's a lot of different things, but the social vulnerability is also this is based on the way that the data on these maps is just elevation data, and the way they get record it is they fly planes back and forth. It's called lidar, and so this is just showing how accurate it is. But um,
Okay.
I'm so confused about where the legend is. Oh, here it is. Duh, it's right here. So it's this guy up here. They changed the website. So this is the legend. So when you go to vulnerability, see the dark red is high social vulnerability.
Gotcha. Okay. Huh.
So this is not my favorite tool though. My favorite tool from NOAA is this one. It's called the Coastal Flood Exposure Mapper. And if you hit launch, get started, it also has, all the different locations. And there's another website I can show you guys where it goes around the world, not just it has maps like this globally. But let's go to South Florida for this one. So
Let's do it.
this is the legend here for this one. So you have all these different layers. So there's the hazard layer. So like there's the hazard is like the likelihood of flooding occurring, and then there's the exposure, which is what would be the impact of that flooding. If it's a wetland and it flooded, you know, water goes in, water goes out, the birds didn't mind, everything is fine. But if it's something where critical services are interrupted or you get a lot of damage, like obviously that's a problem. So they have this flood hazard composite. Like if I don't want to go through this too much, but you can just go in and play with all these different toggles. Like you can press the I to figure out what it means. So the composite is like 9 different flood categories that have to do with sea level rise, storm surge, all kinds of things. But then you can switch. This is the same red from the other map, high tide flooding. So these are areas where
Oof.
you click the eye here and
That's
you
a
can see
lot.
low-lying areas that are prone to flooding during high tide. Yeah.
Wow.
Then you have
That's
the
a
flood zones
lot.
here if you want to know what flood zone you're in. So like everything is in a flood zone, but the red one is worse than the lighter red, and the yellow is only the 500-year flood, the 2.2%.
Oh,
So you can see a
man.
big difference between Broward and Miami-Dade. Then you have the storm surge. So this is cool too because you can look at the storm surge, this slider bar. You can go from category 1, category 2, and then category 3. So you can go all the way up to category 5, and you can see how the different colors, like red is the worst storm surge, more than 9 feet, whereas the blue is
Wow.
only up to 3 feet. So you can see going up to category 5. I mean, you can zoom out of all of Florida, and you'll notice that the West Coast is a lot more vulnerable than the East Coast.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I'll tell you why. Is because, look, here's that plate there. Remember, we saw that was 200 miles to
Mm-hmm.
this limestone platform? So when the water is coming, like a hurricane is pushing water through the Gulf of Mexico and it's really shallow, all this land, all this, it's not land, it's the seafloor. So as the storm surge piles on top of itself, it gets higher and higher. So we're actually,
That
that's
makes
a good
sense.
thing. Like, look, there's no red around Palm Beach, Broward, Miami-Dade. We don't have any, it's mostly blue, even with a category 5. So that's a
Wow,
good thing that
that's
we have going for us.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, that definitely sucks for the southwestern region though. But I'm
yeah,
glad that our area is a little bit more protected, I guess. I
yeah.
remember seeing a couple years ago in Miami, there was such an extreme hurricane flooding. So I don't remember which hurricane it was. I'm trying to remember, but I remember seeing images of like statues. There was like a Buddha or something like that that was going down the street in the floodwater. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was like a
No,
giant
that sounds
statue.
crazy.
Yeah, I think it was from some kind of church or something, and it was. Do you remember which was the hurricane that came through Miami a few years ago? And the storm surge was like extreme, and it flooded out like really, really bad. Maybe it was like seven,
Irma?
8 years ago or something like that. It might have been. It was bad, but
Yeah.
yeah, there was just like this giant statue just going down the street, and it was absolutely horrifying seeing the storm surge that intensely. I mean, we lived through Andrew. We both lived in Florida at the time when Hurricane Andrew came through, and that was
Yeah.
absolutely devastating. But thankfully, we didn't have any kind of issues. We lived so far inland, we didn't have to worry about any of that at that time. But that's intense, seeing that the storm surge can actually have that big of an
Well,
effect.
and this data is called the maximum of maximums, which is extreme. Like this is the worst possible case scenario. So it's not ever likely going to be this bad. Um, but Yeah, so this is the same sea level rise layer. I just want to go through these.
Yeah, please.
Now there's the green here, the same thing. See, so the green is like already waterways that are already flooded, but or it's just not connected. It's low-lying areas that aren't actually connected through a direct way to the intercoastal. But then, like, there's an area in Hollywood that I work with. Like, it's a this see Las Olas Boulevard. This is the road I told you about that used to be a canal where it's just flooded. Look at this. I'll raise so with this one you can raise the sea level down here. You got 1 foot of flooding. Look at that. Just with 2 feet of sea level rise,
Whoa.
like and
Whoa.
the whole road is under. And look at 3 feet, four
Oh
feet. This
no.
is why Fort Lauderdale A1A was flooded. I mean, look at these Las Olas Isles are in really big trouble.
Shit.
Yeah, that's just
That's
4 feet.
bad.
Hmm.
Oh man. Yeah, that's
And then
not good.
and then a
Oh
little bit
god.
further south in Hollywood, like this area is all a park, it's all wetlands, but this area here, these are turning lakes for yachts. And look at that. Even with I so I actually I'm connected to a synagogue in Hollywood, and we do this thing every year called the King Tide Walk. And even all these roads, like we meet by the lake here, and we walk and it's a sunny day and there's 2 feet of water in the road just because it's the full moon in the fall, which is our highest tide of the
Oh,
year.
two
Yeah,
feet? Whoa.
yeah. I have pictures of
Dang.
it actually in one of my, I think this one I do.
Yeah, show me. That's crazy.
Oh, this was a picture. It was Halloween last time. Look at this, this person.
Cute. With the scuba mask on. Oh, wow.
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, wow.
They tried to put these little,
Jeez.
this was more for debris, but it's a huge problem. Um, I thought I had more. Well, anyways, let me get back to the tools because
Ooh.
so this one, so the exposure, they have exposure to the population. So there's population density. And see, so it does it like underneath. You can see like the darker brown is the
Cool.
most dense populations. So you can see like where are the most dense populations that are at risk of flooding, or where is the highest poverty. So that's the darkest purple. Interesting with Broward County, like poverty, they call there's a big, the dark purple here is kind of between 95 and the turnpike. You can look at elderly populations, is the darker blue. The most employees is darker green. You can look at development. They have critical facilities. This is why I like this one the most. So like how
Oh,
many
this is
schools, how many
great.
fire stations are at risk to flooding at 2 feet of sea level rise? And then you even have like brownfields and pollution sources. And it says wetland potential here because, we do have a lot of mangroves that if there's a place where they can migrate inland, they can actually go up with sea level rise. Okay, see this like pink here? That's so
Yeah.
cool. High wetland potential. So there's a lot of
Interesting.
potential for the mangroves to move and migrate into this
Wow.
area.
So, a lot of the green areas that are lowland areas that aren't connected to the main waterways are those the areas that are more at risk from the flooding coming up from the ground through the limestone?
Say that one more time.
Are the lower areas not connected to the main waterways more susceptible to the underground flooding?
Yes, exactly, exactly. The
Okay.
groundwater is definitely going to be a problem here.
So they're getting more seepage. But it's fresh
Mm,
water because it's the aquifer water that's pushing up, so it's not seawater coming through the ground. Is that correct?
exactly. Yeah, it's just fresh
Okay. All
water.
right.
Okay,
Wow.
you ready for the next tool?
I'm
Which
so
one do you
ready.
like so far more? You like the sea level rise viewer or the coastal flood exposure mapper?
I think that last one was fantastic. There was so
Yeah.
much to it. I mean, I like
Yeah, this
both of
one's
them
my
for
favorite.
different reasons. Seeing the visual of the photograph, on the first one where you can see the water level. That is really, really cool. But this is, there's so many more factors that this takes into account. I
Yeah.
love it.
And that one with the photograph, like they actually have a tool where you can do it yourself. You can go somewhere and take a photo. So that's pretty cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
So I
That's
actually
really
met
neat.
the guy that's behind this website called Flood Factor. This one is really good. Like you can type in any address and it will tell you like parcel specific all the things about your rips. Like with the NOAA
Oh,
tools, you
really?
can't zoom in. Like this is as far as you can zoom in. But does
Gotcha.
anybody want to type their address into the chat and we can do it? Come
Ooh.
on, guys.
Let's start with your address. Do your address first, and we'll see who
Okay.
else
Well, I
pops
don't
up.
have
Because
flood
that's
risk, but yeah.
whew, good thing. Apparently, I don't either. Thank goodness.
So here's my address. This is actually the cul-de-sac where I grew up. My dad still lives across the street in my childhood
Really?
home.
That's
Yeah, it's so
awesome.
crazy, especially given like I didn't even apply to a Florida school. I wanted to get out of here so badly, but after I lived in Boston and then London, England, I just missed. I had kids. I missed my family.
Oh, you got
So
to live in London. That's so cool.
yeah,
I
my
really love
ex-husband is
London.
British,
Oh, that's super cool.
but now
I
he lives here.
really love England. I've been quite a few times and I enjoy it a lot. It's really cool. They don't know how to make toast though, I'll tell you that much. But besides that, it's great. Like shitty toast.
Well, yeah, they have flood risk too, but I loved living there as a student. I studied abroad there, but then when I was there as like a mom, it was harder. So I'm glad I'm not leaving South Florida, I don't think. But but yeah, look, so they give you a factor like score out of 10 and see two, like 10 is the worst, and this is a two. Oh, I'm going to show you actually Mola Avenue. That's the one that I was showing you in Fort Lauderdale. That's a bad one. Show best match.
Okay.
I need a number. Here we go. 422 Mola Avenue. So this is a 10 out of 10. This is the kind of one we want to
Ugh.
look at.
Yes.
So it tells you it's in a flood zone. Flood insurance is required. It has an extreme flood risk, and then there's all these like explanations of there's slider bar based on within the next year this property has a 38% chance of 1 inch of water reaching the building at least once, not just their
Oh,
yard, but it goes into the building. And then look at that.
ouch.
It's over 30 years, there's a 99% chance. I mean, I'm sure that this building is getting flooded all the time. I've seen it.
Oh,
Um,
no.
so then it tells you like of all the different properties in the area, so you can filter properties like minor risk, extreme. Look, they're all extreme.
They're extreme as fuck right now. D.
Yeah, and this is
Oof.
this is Las Olas Boulevard. Like right down there is downtown where we went to the Edge. You know,
The Edge.
remember
Ah,
the
that was the
Edge?
best. That was the coolest music venue back in the day. I remember I saw Marilyn Manson there when there was only like 100 people there. It was fantastic. It's great. That was a
I went to
great
my
spot.
like one of my first concerts there. I saw Foo Fighters and For Squirrels. That was really good.
Awesome. That's so awesome. Yeah, I kind of forgot about the Edge. That's a great spot. They probably tore that down too, huh? It's probably gone.
No, now it's called something stupid. I can't remember.
Oh,
But look at this. So
over
here
the
you can
edge.
like you can look at flooding with like buildings impacted. Oh, this is Hurricane Irma. So they actually show you during Hurricane Irma which areas were
Oh,
flooded. Even a little
interesting.
flooding can damage a building. So like shows you with different inundation levels, like at 1 to 2 feet, it's getting into your outlets, right? Things like that. So
Ouch.
it just keeps going on and on. Like, look at this
Oh.
flooding
Oh
likelihood, water to
no.
building. And yeah, this is definitely one of the most comprehensive tools. And then they talk about precipitation changes, sea surface temperature. I mean, you could spend so much time here exploring. So this one is called floodfactor.com. And there's one
Wow,
more I
that's
think I have to show
awesome.
you. It's called Climate Central. Climate Central is out of Princeton. And actually, I sent you this. I have a spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet with like all of the different like all these different data tools, not just related to climate, but also health and equity. And there's so many tools to look at data. But this one in Climate Central, like they have a lot of the same stuff: the sea level rise projections, social vulnerability, ethnicity, landmarks, property. So you do the same thing. You have like a slider bar where you raise the sea level, but they have one where it's worldwide. So see, it
Wow,
says
that's
enter a
super
global
cool.
coastal place. So do you want to pick somewhere in the world?
Yeah, let's do Amsterdam.
Oh, so I don't know if how it's going to look because it's like it's below sea level. Yeah, so everything is well. That's with 8 feet.
Oof, 8 feet.
Go back to 1 foot. See,
So 1 foot.
they're doing this based on the elevation, but in reality,
Gotcha.
it's all protected. So these areas are
Okay,
not flooded.
that makes sense. Okay, so
They're
that
just
was
below
not a.
sea level.
Okay, what about. What do you feel like is another area that is more vulnerable that will show us what we want to see here?
Look at see how many tools they have. They just want us to look at more tools.
That's awesome.
Um, how about the Maldives
Ooh, yes. Which is on my list of places to go.
while it's still there? Like these are.
I
Did you see
know.
that? Look at this. This is with 1 foot of sea level rise.
Oh no!
Yeah,
Oh no!
that's really bad.
Shit. That's
There was this.
really bad.
Yeah.
You're right, while it's still there. You know, when we went to Italy, we were in Sorrento and we were in Rome and we had to decide whether we were going to do Florence or Venice because we only had time to do one. And we went to Greece and we did London, we did a bunch of shit. But I chose Venice because I'm like, I don't know how much longer it's going to be around.
Yeah,
So maybe we pull up Venice and see how that looks
that's a good
because
idea.
I
Yeah,
wanted
I
to go
thought I'd
check
go
it
to
out. It floods a
Venice. Is
lot.
yeah, they built this dam in Venice. Oh, that went to Venice, Florida. Venice, city of Venice, Italy. They built this dam there, the Moses Dam, and it's just such a shit show. I have a friend that's a Rolling Stone author, and he wrote a book about sea level rise, which I really recommend. It's called The Water Will Come, and he was writing about the dam in one of the chapters, and well, it's not a dam; it's like a flood barrier. But they called the and it's he called it the Ferrari under the seafloor. But look, there it is, right there. That's
Oh,
gonna close.
wow.
But yeah, Venice is a
Yeah, apparently recently there was a flooding event where they didn't realize it was going to flood as much as it did, so they didn't close the dam, and it flooded extremely. And they're like, "Oh, we fucked up. Sorry about that. Like we underestimated." But the whole like, main square, whatever it was, I don't remember the name of the square. I want to say St. Charles Square, but I don't think that's it. Saint There's a Saint Square, but it was really flooded out. But yeah, that's kind of cool that they built the Ferrari under the sea to try to keep that out. It's awesome. I like that.
yeah. It's a great book. I was a professor at Broward College, and I made my students read it, and then I had him come give a talk.
Oh,
But
that's awesome. That's
yeah,
really cool. Oh, you're a professor too. That's really neat.
um, nobody put any more addresses in. Nobody wants to see another place.
Dusty had a point that it might be against the Twitch rules to put
Yeah.
addresses in,
Okay.
which was kind
Um,
of a good point. But what about maybe like the Bahamas or something like that? Some of the little islands out there, like
oh no.
Nassau or something. Or even Key West. I mean, shoot, the
Oh yeah,
Keys.
Key
That's
West.
not going to look too good.
Here's NASA.
Oh
Yeah, I think
wow.
that people can explore these. I don't think, you know, we could stop looking.
I'm
It's more
enjoying
fun, I
it though. I
think.
think it's been fun.
Okay, I have one more city. It's on the tip of my tongue. Well, actually, you know where's really in big trouble? Wow, I'm just so freaking tired. Like, I need to look at a world map. I'm like not remembering places.
Dusty says, "What about the Gulf of Mexico?" But where off the Gulf of Mexico, Dusty? Because we're looking at land and how it's affected.
Yeah, Bangladesh, like these areas are in trouble. Bangladesh, Thailand, Bangkok. That's what I was trying to think of. Have you been to Bangkok?
Not yet. It's on the list.
I did after I got married, I did a around the world trip and we did all like
Cool.
the Pacific Islands in Southeast Asia.
Oh, that's amazing. How
Bangkok
cool.
is in big trouble.
Really? Uh
The
oh.
buildings are so heavy, like the skyscrapers also, and this they're taking water out, so the land is also subsiding.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
That's not good.
And then
Oh, that's too bad. Dusty said Houston too.
oh, Houston.
He's curious about Houston.
Hmm.
Oh man, that whole coast. Shit.
Yeah, but the city is pretty high up. Look, even with 10 feet, it's not getting too
No,
far into the city.
the city is good, but those coastal areas, man, that's far in. That's really far. So besides Miami, where would you say in the states what cities are the most vulnerable at this
Um,
time?
I think that, around New York, there's a lot of vulnerable areas. Um, like New York City, that a lot of the Northeast is vulnerable. A lot of Virginia, a lot of the Gulf. I mean, the Carolinas. There's there's vulnerable cities everywhere.
There
Anywhere
really
that
is.
there's low-lying areas along the coast. On the West Coast as well, but you saw your sea level isn't rising as fast, and there's a lot of bluffs. I mean, even if there's bluffs, they're eroding, right?
They are. Chid says so. We should be buying oceanfront at plus or minus 75 miles from the coast. Yeah, there you go. Just plan ahead. Real quick, I want you to tell me the story about how you got contacted by Jack Black, because Jack Black was interested in the climate change and sea level rise, and that he did a short little documentary. How did you get involved with that?
Actually, it was they reached out to me. Like I guess the TED Talk was a real break, and people saw that, and it got around, and it's hard to find a good speaker on this topic, and so they just reached out to me. But it was National Geographic was doing a series called Years of Living Dangerously. So there's two seasons of it. And
Oh,
the first one had Harrison Ford. It's so good. He goes to Indonesia and the deforestation, like he learns about. So basically, the premise of the show is they send a famous person somewhere in the world to learn about how climate change is impacting that part of the world. So
that's
when the
awesome.
producer reached out to me, I was like, yeah, of course. And he was like, we want to do a bunch of scenes with you. Most of them ended up getting cut, but I got to spend a whole week with him,
Damn it.
with Jack Black, and it was so much
Really?
fun. Yeah, originally it was supposed to be Mark Ruffalo, and then they changed him to Jack Black, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's still really cool. But yeah, he came down
I
and
love
they had
Jack
him.
Black.
Yeah,
Okay.
when
That's so
he
cool.
in real life, that's exactly how he is on TV. Like he has the same character. He doesn't get. I mean, or either that, or he wasn't ever getting out of character. But he just is such a like goofy guy. Like we
That's what
had
I
this
would have
scene.
imagined from him, actually. So that's kind of cool to hear that that is the case.
They were filming a scene at there's a University of Miami campus that's right by the tide gauge, and it's beautiful, and there's a walkway to where I was going to be showing the maps and the data, and they wanted a shot of like me walking with Jack Black and then introducing him to my scientist friends, like the professor there. And they made us do that walk so many times. I think we did it like it was like half an hour later. They just kept like telling us. At one point, we were holding hands,
That's so cute.
and then his wife
Frolicking
was
and
calling
skipping
him.
together.
Yeah, he has two boys. Like his wife was calling about them, like their Jewish preschool or whatever. Like it was just really cute. I didn't even know he was Jewish. I
I didn't either. Interesting.
know. Our kids just
That's
go to. I
funny.
mean, those Jewish schools, they teach your kids how to read. My kids learn so early. The
I went to
JCC.
a
So,
Jewish preschool. Yep. And my mom worked at JCC when I was a kid.
yep, JCC is the way to go.
So
But
the
anyways,
morals coming from it.
it was. Oh, and then at one point we were doing a scene at a hotel, and they were like, "Bring your kids. We want to They were thinking about doing a scene with the kids, so they got to hang out with him too, which I thought was like a
That's
cool mom moment,
so
right?
cool. Are you a
Yeah,
fan of Tenacious D?
yeah.
Me too. I love them so much. And the Tenacious D show, it is I've seen it so many times. It was on HBO in the late 90s and it's absolutely hilarious sketch comedy show. If you haven't seen it, definitely recommend it.
I
It's
remember
really
that.
funny.
Yeah, we should watch it again. I still
You
watch the Chappelle
definitely
show
should.
sometimes.
Oh man. Oh yeah, yeah. All that stuff from that era, that comedy, Mr. Show. Also, I don't know if you've seen Mr. Show
Yeah,
with
I
Bob and
remember that.
David. It's great. And actually, Jack was on a few episodes of Mr. Show, and then David Cross and Bob Odenkirk, who were the Mr. Show people, were co-writers on the Tenacious D show. So they're all homies. They're all like on a team together, and it's hilarious. I just think he's just such a seems like such a cool, fun, funny, laid back kind of dude. So I'm glad to see that he was doing something like introspective when it first popped up on my Facebook. I didn't even know that you were in it. It was so funny. I was like, "Oh, Jack Black, he's talking about climate change. That's awesome." Like, let me see it. Then I'm like, "Oh my god, it's Karen." No way. I thought it was so funny that you just popped up in that. But what a cool experience that they contacted you to be a part of it and sharing your information. Too bad they cut most of the damn scenes though. That sucks.
Yeah, they cut. Yeah, but I got to spend the time. Like the producer called me. He's like, "Karen, you're gonna be pissed when you see it." I was like, "That's fine. You know, we got to film them." He's like, "We're gonna do little cuts of it." I'm like, it is what it is because they had to squeeze it so much filming. But it was actually funded by Bloomberg. They were paying more than like they really wanted National Geographic to do this. I've done a lot of other TV stuff too. Like there was another PBS special which I really liked. That one was more recent, and I was again showing maps and taking them around Miami. And at one point, like they put the maps on my face. Like they were just I had the maps up. It was like at an auditorium at University of Miami, and the maps were like up on the screen, but I was walking around, and they were like, "The maps look so good on your face. Like we're gonna do a whole shot." Like like it's fun how they do all these cinematic things. So like they did this thing where the camera like went all the way around me with all the maps on my like they just do weird
Cool.
things. I learned a lot about
That's
how they make
awesome.
TV, like through all these things.
Yeah, that's so fun. I'm glad that you have been asked to participate in some of these things, which is what you want to be doing is getting the information out there to people. So what better way to do it than TV shows because that's how most people are getting their information is from shows or, clips, video clips on the internet. People aren't really wanting to read giant papers as much as they I guess were when there was less distractions, but now they want the information pretty fast. So,
Yeah.
have you been contacted or thought about doing like an entire full length documentary on the subject and you kind of putting the whole thing together?
No.
It's too much.
Yeah. I like it for a little bit here and there.
But what if you could hang out with David Attenborough and work together and tell the
Oh,
people?
then I would do it. Yeah.
Oh
No,
my
I mean,
God.
the thing is,
I love him.
these people, they find you. Like, I could go out there and promote myself or try and create it myself, but I get some opportunities, but the rest of the time, got to do my real job, right?
Well, I'm putting it out there into the Twitch universe. If anybody knows David Attenborough, please have him contact Karen.
Yeah.
God, he's such an
I
incredible human being.
I actually have had like a thought recently, like maybe I'll just reach out to Greta. I wonder if you know that girl, like maybe she'll talk to me.
Yes,
Maybe, like, because
I
I'm not like
bet
some
you
kind of
would.
weirdo. I'm like a legit climate scientist. Like maybe she'll be like, "Oh, hello."
I bet she would, especially you being a woman as well. Like I think that that would be good because she's such a big, female activist. I bet she
Yeah,
would. She's so magical. God,
yeah,
that shit got me when she took a sailboat all the way across the ocean to go to the climate summit and then yelled at all the grown people, like,
yeah.
how dare you? Like,
How
oof,
dare
that
you?
really got me. She's incredible. And, we all want to think that one person can't really make a difference, but then you see somebody like her and how
People that were
many
marching.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
on
she's got
Friday.
everybody to
We
do
did the
the, yeah,
daytime,
yeah,
the
the
Friday
the
one.
strike for climate. She's
Yeah.
awesome. She's so
But
awesome. I would love it
people
if you
give
got to
her such
talk
a
to her.
hard time. People give her, like, everyone gave her a hard time.
I
And,
know.
but she's amazing. Yeah. It's
You know,
true. Like,
people that try to speak up for things like this, there's always going to be some kind of pushback from people that don't understand. Like that random person that just popped in the chat. I have no idea who that was. Someone just random on Twitch just came in and started talking shit about climate change, and Dusty blocked him. You're out, like, sorry, if you want to have a good discussion, that's fine, but if you're going to come in and be like it's all bullshit, like, you gotta go. So there's a lot of pushback, and poor Greta, who's just this young person who's just trying to make the world better, and the news anchors attacking her and everything. It's insane. It's crazy. What a weird
yeah.
world that we live in right now. But either way, this shit is absolutely happening. And the people that want to deny it, they don't matter because they're not really that big of a part of the equation in the end. It's got to be smaller percentages out of the entire world. People living in places where they can see the effects of this. It's hard to deny it at this point, and it's just going to get harder and harder for them to deny it. So, if they want to stick their head in the sand, they can do that. They're going to drown when the water level rises if their heads in the sand. So, but thank you for doing your part to research and educate people on this subject. It's a really important subject. So, I'm really grateful that you took the time to come and hang out with us tonight and share all of this. Thank you so much.
It was great to be here. And yeah, I love doing this. I love talking to it. It's my favorite thing to talk about, sea level rise.
It's
And I love when
great.
people, yeah, like sometimes, someone will tell me, like, you know, I, I saw you speak. It's this woman, we became friends, and she's like, the first time I saw you speak, I was so inspired, and I became more of an activist because of you. And like, we were already
Really?
friends. Yeah, and that really touched me. I mean, it made me feel so good that because now she's just a really big leader, and she said that that was a turning point when she saw, like, we was at some kind of climate march, and they asked me to, talk for 10 minutes, and she was just telling me like specific things I said that got her really excited and inspired, and that makes me
Wow.
so,
That
yeah.
is great. That's what it's all about. So, that being said, if you could give a message to the listeners right now on something that they can do to help to make a difference, if they're inspired by this talk, what do you think people can do to make the biggest or any difference really at all?
I think it's to increase awareness, to talk about this, talk about sea level rise every single day, and be a stand and start a movement. Like, it's not, we can show these data and tools and maps, and that's part of the story. But the other part of the story is your heart and putting, like, what does it mean to you? Like, really think about what this means to you. Like, for me, I showed you the picture of my kids, in the water. Like, that's what gets me. I just want them to have everything. I want them to be able to raise their kids here. So, whatever. like, do the research and read as much as you can and see what resonates for you and tell your own story that matters to you. And the more people you tell it to, I mean, that's what's going to inspire. We need to, this is not something that you can do with data or facts or, looking good. It's about speaking from the heart in a way that you light something in someone that they're not going to be the same again. They're not going to be able to think about climate change again and not feel like I need to do something. What else, how many what kind of local groups can I join? There's a really good group called the Citizens Climate Lobby, and they have chapters all over the world. And they lobby a little bit, but it's not that bad. I mean, it's important. People say all the time, like, you should contact your decision makers. And I feel like that's so cheesy, but it works, like they need to know that you care. And I think, there's a lot of local groups, whether it's like a King Tide March or just like get involved in, there's a lot of activist groups. There's one called the Sunrise Movement. Those kids are awesome. There's groups where there's one called the Extinction Rebellion. There's organized groups of people. So I would say get connected to people and talk to people. And I think that it's going to take a movement, kind of like the civil rights movement, which we don't have right now. I was listening to a podcast where they were like, we need an anthem. And they looked at all these songs that were related to climate change to try and find an anthem. Because they were talking about this song that they sang during the civil rights movement, the We Shall Overcome. And they were saying how that song empowered everyone and that we need a soul, we need music, we need it to be, like that stupid little Dicky video about climate change. Did you see that? I mean, it's so
Uh-uh.
dumb. It's really dumb. Like he has so many famous people talking about it, and you should watch it.
Huh.
It's really cute.
I, w- I think we need Jack Black to make a song because he is the most like intense and people will watch anything that he does and he's got a lot to say. That would be really cool if, you got somebody who actually already is interested and cares about this. You're right, to make some kind of song or something prominent to really grab people. I mean, we had We Are the World when we were kids and shit like that too, And like still feel that in my heart when I hear it. So you're right. Music does touch people in that kind of
Yeah, I
way.
think it's going to take a whole societal shift to demand that things change. And the problem is we're addicted. We're addicted to all these single-use products, right? The and we're addicted to electricity. Like we're as much as we try, we're so addicted to all these things that we're like, what are we going to demand not to have these things we're addicted to? But in
Yeah,
reality, there's baby steps, and changing our, like you said, you recycle like a little bit here and there, just saying you don't want to use too much packaging. I'm not, if you say I don't buy things that they have too much packaging. And if people realize that, maybe they'll stop using so much packaging. But policies too. Why can't there be they have policies in Europe where you can't have toothpaste in a box. Why not just sell a freaking tube? Why do you need it in a box?
totally. Yep.
Why do you need all these products to be in boxes and boxes and boxes? Because it looks big. And
Sometimes
so,
I've ordered an eyeliner, which is that big, and it comes in a big cardboard box with a bunch of
uh,
plastic bubble wrap, and I'm like, it's a fucking eyeliner. Like you could have put that
yeah.
in an envelope and it would have been 1,000,000% fine. Like it irritates me so bad that it's just this excessive use of things and it strikes me every time where I'm like, oh, this is horrible. Like, why are you doing this? If I ordered some stuff from Michael's and in one box there was just this like one little package of tombstones that I got. I ordered a bunch of stuff, put it all in the same freaking box. I got a whole box for one tiny piece of crap thing. And it's stuff like that. If they tried to change the habits and the ways that things are done, thinking about like, okay, well, we're not gonna just do this one little tombstone in this box. We're gonna make sure that it gets put into this. Like every little bit counts. Everything counts in the end. I mean, I gotta say, I'm really happy to be here in Seattle because Seattle really cares about the environment. We have forests all throughout our city. Like, there's over 400 parks in Seattle. There's green belts. There's so much nature that people live harmoniously with it as much as possible, and that shows in the kind of practices that we have at restaurants and stores. So, for example, in Seattle city limits, you can't have plastic bags. It's only paper, which is a whole other thing, but it's not plastic, which is good. You're not allowed to use styrofoam. No plastic straws are allowed in the city limits. A lot of restaurants, which I'm so happy to see, use the eco products that are made, compostable plastic made from corn. So the restaurant that I worked at on the beach, all of our silverware, like to go silverware, was all corn biodegradable products. All of the little ramekins, all of the cups, the straws, the to go boxes, everything, every single thing was being mindful of the environment. And yeah, maybe the profit isn't as much. Maybe in a year you lose a couple $1,000s in profit because you're using these products instead, but it's worth it. I think it's so worth it, and if more cities would jump on this, I feel like that would make a huge difference in the end, at least as far as waste, and then the factories that it takes to make all these plastic products, and people use a fork one time and throw it in the garbage can, like it's bad. So I think if more places caught on, it would help. But we have the pushback from the middle of the country in the south, where styrofoam reigns king.
There was
Yeah.
there was a John Oliver about single-use plastics. You ever watch him? The Last Week
Yeah,
Tonight?
yeah, sometimes. Yeah, I didn't happen to see that one though. That sounds
Yeah, it
interesting.
was showing that there's actually these lobbyists for the plastic companies. They're going to different cities and counties and getting bans, like preemptive bans on single-use plastic bans. So like
Really?
all, yeah, there's all these things that, environmentalists are trying to push, and they're just getting out there before and saying, no, we're not, like there's a law now that you're not allowed to do this. There's
That's awesome. There should be. I think that there
no,
should
no, 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 it's
be.
bad. I didn't explain it right.
Oh no, okay,
They're
maybe sorry, I
banning,
misunderstood.
they're banning the lobbyists for the plastic companies are banning
Oh,
bans. They're banning bans. Like you
I
can't
got you.
have any.
Okay,
They're saying don't even
gotcha.
try to ban plastic because we wrote this law that you're not allowed to ban plastic. You're not allowed to ban
Okay, that's
plastic
fucked up.
bags, like plastic bags in groceries. You're not allowed to ban that. You're not allowed to ban, like they're going and saying like anything that these environmentalists can try to ban, we're going to write a law preventing them from even trying.
Oh my
There's something
goodness.
with sunscreen in Florida where cities tried to ban that sunscreen that hurts the coral reefs, and they banned the
Yeah.
ban. They're banning bans.
Oh God, what?
They
How
pre-banned
can they?
it.
All you have to do is make a different sunscreen. It's so simple that all
Yeah,
we have to do is if we realize something's that bad, just make an attempt to fix it. But instead, they're banning the bans. And this is why we're fucking doomed. That is exactly, in a nutshell, why we're doomed. People are banning bans over things that are actually helping. Like I remember when all this shit happened with the paper straws a couple years ago, and Trump was like, he's like, whatever, paper straws. It's just like the Democrats, where it just falls apart in water. Da 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 da. And he made his own straws. Do you remember that whole thing where he was selling his own plastic straws
I missed
that
that.
said Trump engraved in them, and they were like $20 for four of them. He was literally counteracting this movement by making his own straws. But the main thing was he was talking shit about paper straws, which paper straws do suck. But guess what? At my restaurant, we had this straw that was made of corn that you would swear is plastic. It's just as durable. It doesn't fall apart.
Yeah,
It
I've
just
seen that.
biodegrades if it's in a freaking landfill. Like, yes, it's a little more expensive, but they're like, it's either plastic straws with Trump on them or paper that falls apart. There's nothing in between. It's like there literally is in between, and they're just not willing to see it. So that's why I think these kinds of things are good, like you said, with educating people about, hey, there are middle ground. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
all or nothing with these things. See, we got to find out the things that we can do to try to make, you know, make the impact that we can. I don't need 12 straws a day. I don't want to use 12 straws a day. I don't think that that's that's not good. Now that I understand the impact that it's having, I don't feel right about it. I actually feel like an asshole when I use a regular straw. I really do. And you know what? Maybe it's not the worst because we're conditioned to it, but I'm glad that I feel like an asshole because I'm aware of it every day. And it's better to be aware than to not be aware. And I will choose to not use straws sometimes, and sometimes out of convenience, I will, but I still feel remorse for it. So over time, I think we'll phase that kind of stuff out, I hope. And
I'm
speaking of
glad that
phasing out,
you're.
you're phasing out too. I can see
Oh,
you're
I
getting
know.
tired.
I'm usually asleep by like 10 or 11. This is crazy.
I'm I'm so sorry to keep you up so late, but I'm really glad that you were able to come on and do this. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
It was
So, and
amazing.
Chid in the chat said that he thinks that you guys would be BFFs. So he might find you on Facebook if you're cool with that. He's Timothy
Yes.
Chidlaw. So if you get a friend request from Timothy Chidlaw, that's him. I think you guys
Okay.
might have a lot to chat about. That would be
Is
really
he in
cool.
the
So
quarantine tea party group?
you know what? I don't know if he is now that I'm thinking about it.
I want to
He
join that
absolutely
group.
should be. Absolutely. He is the most sarcastic and hilarious person pretty much that I know. And he absolutely needs to join that group. If you're listening, shit, I'm going to send you an invite. It's
Yeah.
right up your alley. But yeah, thank you just for sharing everything. And I'm really glad you had all the visualizations to help us all kind of have a good visual on what's happening and what to expect. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Sammy. It was really good to
You're
talk to you.
awesome. It was really
Thanks for
good to
everyone
talk to
else
you
for
too.
joining, Chit and everyone.
Yeah. Dusty, let's queue up a human juke raid. So we'll take everybody that's in the chat that wants to go and go into Human Juke's channel. He's a musician that streams here on Twitch. It's awesome.
Oh,
Dusty said
fun.
thank you for sharing your point of view with us. And
Aw.
he's so thankful that you took the time to join us. I really, really am too. It was very, very informative, and science is real. It's real. This is a real scientist, a doctor scientist right here. So we only had
We're
one
gonna come
random
to
hater come in.
Seattle. We're gonna come to
Oh, that'd be
Seattle and visit
great.
you guys. I don't know when,
I
but
would love that. I will show you an amazing time. There's so much cool stuff to see out here. It's absolutely incredible. You just let me know. You're welcome to crash with me if you want, or, whatever. And I'll just show you around. We would have a really, really good time. Seattle's beautiful. And like I said, we care. We care about each other and preserving these spaces. You will love all the parks. We have so many amazing parks with mushrooms and moss and lichen, and it's so beautiful. I'm glad that it's
no.
not a complete concrete jungle. We didn't blaze it all to the ground. So it's good. But all right. Well, thank you so much for being here. You go get some sleep, and we will see you again soon. I hope you can pop back into the chat sometime for some of the other shows we have in the future. That would be
I
good.
will. Okay.
Yay.
Bye. Thank
All
you.
right. Good night. Take
Bye.
care, my dear. Thanks for being here. Bye. All right, we're queuing up for this raid. Thank you everybody for being here. Check you later.